Okay. Yeah. It's all the slides to ignore, but then key thing is just being like people.
You're gonna answer that question.
Yeah. Okay, so we're not properly starting yet, but there are a few bits and pieces that we need to do from a housekeeping standpoint. Because it's going to be recorded and other bits, we want to make sure that everyone's really clear with the COVID-19 protocols that we're obviously observing in the space, but then also answering any other questions that people have. So before then, seeing lots of smiley faces. We've definitely got big smiles over there. Lee over there is inside his protective measures, but still we know that the warm smile is there. Over there, Manuela, that's a big one.
Lol.
Big one. Right, so first things first, Dr. Ekene isn't here yet, but we will have a doctor on standby throughout the whole event, and that's for two reasons. The first is obviously from the subtopic matter here today being mental health. If anyone has anything that they would like to be able to speak about at any particular point in time, as a qualified GP and as someone who is in the mental health profession, Dr. Ekene will be on standby to speak to anyone who would like to have a conversation with her. But secondly, there's also going to be obviously the COVID side of things. You would have seen the email that was already sent out that we are going to be looking at your COVID passes, but equally checking for any recent tests. And we also will have tests here for anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to kind of take a test. So all of that will be resolved and sorted. If you do have any further questions, do not hesitate to contact us. Are there any questions right now?
There's also some snacks here as well.
Thank you.
So to clarify, when Edmund says snacks, they are genuinely snacks. But Edmund and Team EY, big shout out to Team EY at the back.
Yes, sir.
They have also provided food. Snack, different from food in this context. Hopefully you will enjoy the food that will be available. But to everyone who is joining us online, unfortunately you won't see our lovely audience, but I see them. They're looking sharp. I'm looking at some really snazzy numbers, and I hope that wherever you are at home, some of you will probably be in lots of different interesting things, but hopefully having a good time with us too. So on that basis, nothing more to say from me. A really big thank you to everyone in the room. I'm going to quickly hand over to your host for the most that you will have today. Yeah.
Hello. We are live at this year's YDWC's ACS Mental Health Conference. Now, big shout out to EY for making this all happen. But before we get started, I'll mention some of the code protocols that we've done beforehand to make sure that everyone's here in a safe and organized manner. So before everyone came in, they would have shown either a COVID pass, or B, presented a negative lateral flow test, and that should hopefully suggest that everybody in this room does not have COVID-19 or anything in relation to that at least. Now, with regards to mental health, I think it's scary because, of course, we're at a point in time when mental health is something that is being spoken about a lot more, and I'm happy to see that. In fact, I'm sure that everybody in this room, everybody watching, has probably spoken to their friends at some point about mental health. Whereas if you were to go back a few years beforehand, or even in the last decade, that probably might not have been too much of a thing. And even so, in the Black community, of course, as Black people, mental health is becoming something I'm talking about a bit more. We're talking about a bit more, but I hope events like this should hopefully make it something that is even less of a stigma, and something that can be spoken about openly and freely to anybody who we feel is we can trust. However, I still feel that there's a long way to go. So I really hope that today we're able to hear from a lot of interesting people about their perspective on mental health, and hopefully we can place the stigma down even more. So today we've got people from the Oxford ACS, Cambridge, Imperial, Nottingham, and even Sussex. That's a whole lot of places. And of course, hopefully this should provide a wide range of perspectives on what mental health means to us in the ACS community, but of course, as the Black community as a whole. Even so, I hope that today we can really make a big impact and really show people what mental health means to us, and hopefully, again, make progress in really making mental health something that can really be openly spoken about. Thank you.
So on that basis, if I double team with our friend over here, we will have a really quick opening remark from today's incredible sponsors. Now, people often say they're paying the bills when we get to this segment. This isn't really about paying bills. Yes, they did make sure that everything could happen today, but EY are genuinely passionate about diversity and inclusion, which is why they have provided for us today. And so on that basis, I'm very happy to call upon a very good friend of mine, Edmund Young.
I don't know where I stand with it. Yeah, but hi everyone, thanks for coming. It's really great to see some of your faces and everyone that's joined us online as well. So what I'm going to go through is just a bit about myself, some of the work that I do on Black talent at EY, and also just a bit of a take on sort of mental health in the Black community as well. Yeah, that will be the agenda. So I've done some research on diversity and sort of mental health in corporate spaces as well. So I'll just go through a bit of that as well. At EY, I look after Black talent attraction. So I lead on that. We've also got a fantastic program called the Black Heritage and Business Program, which I'm putting together. So anyone here or anyone watching in their first year of uni, apply for it. It's going to be great. I'm currently working on it. And essentially, that's a 2-day insight day program where you get to find out more about senior leaders in the business, some of the different service lines that we offer, and also hear from some of the Black communities at EY and what they're doing in different spaces as well. So it's going to be great. So do make sure you apply. My colleague Debbie will talk about other stuff for those in your second or third years as well. Don't worry. My research in diversity. So I studied a master's about 3 years or so ago, and that was on Black talent and selection processes. So within that, I explored sort of barriers to entry as to why we don't see a lot of Black people in leaders of in positions of power or senior leadership or C-suite levels, as we like to call it in corporate. And what I found was that a lot of the times it comes down to creating visibility. A lot of Black talent out there don't know what is available to them, and more now than ever, there needs to be some sort of visibility for us, because sometimes we don't know about the opportunities that are presented to us, and therefore we may have imposter syndrome when we actually are presented with these type of opportunities as well, which is quite important. So I mean, for myself growing up, I always used to hear stuff like, you need to work twice as hard, you need to be a role model, you need to have excellence. And linking that to today's theme as well, sometimes it can be quite damaging, especially if you want to become somebody, or be looked at as somebody that was excellent. And essentially doing that, it means you're sort of limiting yourself from your authentic self. And sometimes it can become a real problem as well when you're growing up, because you have to meet all these expectations, all these societal expectations, and social media as well, that will sort of influence it as well. So I decided to sort of do this research and start sort of creating awareness that we don't need to look at what other people are sort of doing, because a lot of the time it comes from comparing ourselves to other people as well. We see somebody doing well in their space, and then we admire them. We want to do exactly what they're doing. And there's a quote that I saw that sometimes we're too busy watching other people's grass instead of watering our own as well. We like to compare somebody's chapter 50 to our chapter 20 when we don't know especially what they've been through as well. So I think it's really quite important that we acknowledge ourselves and look within ourselves to also see how we manage ourselves as well when it comes to comparing ourselves to other people as well. And on that note, we often see these people doing well as well, and a lot of the times people get to where they are because they've practiced, they've rehearsed, they've done so much things. but you can't practice life, you can't rehearse life. It comes at you very quickly. It's very wild, and sometimes you don't know where to go about it. But what we can do is sort of create awareness of how we react to these things that sort of happen to us as well. And I think one of the things I said was that leaders must also set an example as well. We need to look at people who look at, nurturing, black talent, look at nurturing voices of people from a black background as well, which is quite important. So just some of the things that I'm working on at EY. Next slide. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, before I joined EY, I was always sort of passionate about diversity. I've done so much work in the black talent space, won various awards for it, which is all encouraging. But at the same time, it was just about really creating a platform for people to really create a leveling playing field as well. Sometimes we're so underrepresented that we start to think, what happened? Where did it all sort of start from as well? So when I joined EY, I knew that there was this program in place as well, and I'm really happy to sort of taking over that. So like I mentioned, Discover EY Black Heritage and Business. It's going to be a 2-day insight day program aimed at first-year students and some second years of Black Heritage, where you get to sort of shadow senior leaders within the business, where you get to hear about what a career is like working in tax, assurance, consulting, technology consulting, and various sort of industries as well. So we work in a range of different industries, ranging from real estate to wealth management to healthcare. And it's really important that we really create visibility to those who may not know about these things as well, because these are really lucrative sort of areas that we want to see top leaders, especially from black backgrounds, explore as well. And also looking at an end-to-end review of our talent processes. We always hear about unconscious bias within talent processes, and I've seen it all. From people who may not be cultured, especially interviewers who may butcher your name, or when you maybe get weird comments from colleagues as well, or simply going and then getting great comments about what you're eating at lunch, even though it's just rice and stew. So it's really important to really sort of look at and get more representation essentially within workspaces, and that's a mission of mine. It's going to be a lifelong mission of mine to really make sure that we have representation at all levels, because it's good enough just getting black people to come, and be an associate for 10 years and never becoming a partner or leadership position as well. But we need to get people in those positions, because that's how we then see people and say it is possible to get there as well. So it's a thing I'm working on. We're really sort of reviewing our platforms at EY as well. And we've also got something called the B platform. Now, statistically, we've seen that when I looked at some of the stats, we use a lot of talent, especially black talent, especially when it comes to our testing in the processes. So namely numerical reasoning assessments. And it's nobody's fault. Some people come from positions of privilege. They have access to private tutors and lots of different things as well. So the platform is also a partner that we're working with Affinity, where they sort of provide in-depth analysis of our assessments. So that's our psychological, numerical reasoning assessments and situational judgment assessments as well, to really then look at where people sort of go wrong and then give them step-by-step help as to how they solve it as well. So that's what some of the things I'm working on. Loads of different things, so you can talk to me about all the things I'm working on. But that's just some of the things that I'm working on at EY as well. Next slide. So why Black mental health matters? Within corporate workspaces, again, the numbers show that a lot of black colleagues don't utilize services within sort of their firms regarding sort of mental health, whether they're sort of struggling, going through different things, whether that's family, personal, emotional. And I think it's really important that we really sort of break this stigma in our community and culture. There's this element of, if you do it by yourself, you're going to be seen as, the top dog. Some of your favorite musicians and artists, they talk about coming from the mud or doing things by themselves as well. And sometimes we think, I can get through this by myself. We become so self-reliant or we grow up too fast because of trauma. And it's really important that, we really, especially, I read some statistics the other day that, sort of mental health, especially suicide from Black men, is one of the highest rates as well. And it's really important that we really sort of shine a light on this as well, because, we need to really look at this and think of that, it shouldn't be a crime to talk about how you're feeling. It's not, it's not, you shouldn't be shunned upon for wanting to cry or express emotions as well. People always talk about, I'm hard, I've got this, I'm gonna do this, but it's okay to actually show emotion as well. And I think it needs to become to a certain extent where we're actually utilizing services, knowing to open up to people, to utilize services within, the NHS and other places like that as well, which hopefully one of the more professional people will talk about later as well. And again, representation in corporate workspaces as well, as mentioned, a lot of the times we go through a lot of things and we're really good at hiding things so well. We're really good at it. And I guess that's why some people talk about, the strong Black woman or all these stuff like that as well. We really do hide things well. But I guess the whole point of today is that we're here to have an engaging conversation. It's not another clubhouse conversation. It's an engaging conversation where we can talk about mental health in the Black community. We can look at some practical tips about how to sort of tackle that. Whether you're going through any issues or not, you can take away something that you can also use to help somebody else that you may know or close to yourself as well. So I guess on behalf of myself and some of my colleagues here, I do really hope that you get a lot from this session today, and that you can take something valuable from it as well. And thank you all for being here and those streaming as well. Thank you.
So next we have a representative from the University of Nottingham, Princess, who will be hosting our networking session. And as always, if you'd like to get involved, please do go onto menti.com and use the code 58973307. You'll be able to get involved and hopefully dictate what happens in this. So yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone. So I'm Princess. I'm the welfare officer in Nottingham ACS, African Caribbean Society. And I'll be leading the icebreaker today. So the focus of this is to get you all talking and interacting with people you may not have necessarily walked to in the room. Maybe someone's in the corner, maybe you're feeling a bit shy. We're gonna get that all out. Okay, so the aim of this task is for you to write down something that we wouldn't essentially associate with you based on your look. So write down something that would shock us, right? Write down something that's different about you, that's unique about you. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a paper airplane. We're gonna write down this fact about you, and you're gonna throw it on another side of the room. And the aim is that, number one, you will not pick up your own paper airplane. That's very counterintuitive. And number two is that you find someone else's paper airplane and you're able to network with every single individual in the room in order to identify whose airplane that is and identify the unlikely fact or the shocking fact or the strange fact about you. So I'm going to hand out some paper. Horatio is handing out some pens. And you can work through making this paper airplane together.
Princess, wait, did I write anything that I want on that piece of paper? Just
Yeah.
something.
So the idea is that you're gonna write a fact or something about you that's just a bit of a shocker. Something about you that that's not typical, that we wouldn't have known. Like, say it's a random fact, and we make up a fact. Say like my uncle has a pet lion or something, I don't know. So yeah, okay. Do you want me to pass this out?
What finding out how to make an airplane?
I'm gonna show you how to make it. Oh yeah. Hi Junior. Feel free to send questions and interact online.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll add
I'm very Oh my gosh, thanks.
Okay, so now's the fun part. Now's the fun part. We're gonna work through making the airplane, right? So if you follow me, it should go well. So firstly, we're gonna fold it in half.
Oh, do you write first?
No. We'll write it under the wing. Will you write it in? Do you know what? Write it first. Write it first.
Okay.
Write it first. Can I get a first, please? No, write it. I have to think of the facts, yeah. Now I need to say, oh, you're boring.
You know what?
Okay, guys, I'm gonna give it 1 more minute, 60 seconds, and then we'll get into the making of the airplane, right?
Don't forget. Don't forget.
No, I've got it. Okay. I thought it would have been more.
More.
Better in flight.
Also, fair enough.
I don't think I should explain.
I get
You answer me. Okay. Step 1, fold it in half.
Wait, that's follow you.
This way. Will your plate be good?
We'll find out. I'm even okay. Yeah,
For those that don't know how to make it, step 1, fold it in half. This way. Yeah? Okay, cool. And then once you fold it in half, bring it back out like that, and then bring the corners into the center.
I'm stuck with you.
Is the paper making it harder?
Yeah.
I just wanted to get you some high quality paper.
I know, I really appreciate the paper.
I mean, thank you.
Do you know what it is? The only place I have is the same size. So I could only get the high quality paper.
Yeah.
Okay, are we good with this?
Oh, I already went ahead.
Do you know what? Just go with the right. And then we're gonna fold it in again. Is everyone following? You fold it in again, so you bend this in and let it meet the middle again.
I can't do it.
I am following an image on my
No, I did whatever I thought was right thing to do. It doesn't finish. But, yeah, this is nice. I think it's nice. Wait, I thought we're gonna see it.
Yeah, apparently it's about 40 years ago.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's. I hope it's nice. Why not?
No, it's not. It won't be done though, that's basically it.
Where are you at?
It's basically like, oh my god, just say it, like.
I'm just trying to remember.
Mine's not even done properly.
I did it wrong. Yes, you did. I'm kind of.
Well, you can read it.
Yeah, as long as it flies. As long as it flies. Guys, as long as it flies, I know some of you guys are not gifted in the arts and crafts department. Yeah, literally.
Oh my god, that's so
Okay. Does anyone still need help?
Yeah, after this, you can do it.
Okay, so let me take my one. You take it like this, and then fold it to make that.
It's not folded.
Let me see.
No,
No, guys, let's just go guys. Fold it in half like this.
When do we get to throw it?
Give me 1 minute to help. At this point, just use your creative juices. Okay, guys. So for those of you who have made it, it really should just like this.
Oh.
But
It's good enough. It's fine.
I've kind of given up on you guys, so we'll just throw them anyway.
I like it.
So, yeah, everyone stands up. Should we like all face the center and just throw them?
Yeah,
And
that's
then pick up a random.
Be careful with your eyes.
And be careful with that. Okay.
Countdown? Countdown?
Okay, yeah. Does everyone have an airplane?
Soon.
That is slightly,
Yeah.
It should be aerodynamic.
You know what? This is the new model for British Airways.
No.
Okay. Should we like close our eyes?
Yeah, I like the.
Just no one take out the camera.
Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Oh.
Oh
No. I want to run. I want to second attempt.
Let's go and pick up someone else's. Is that one right?
What's the British Airways one?
Oh, this is interesting.
I didn't even know what to do. See, I know someone who is, but I don't know who it could be. That's the thing.
For those of you who are online, we're now doing entertainment in, so we're all networking around sorry.
I couldn't agree.
Princess, when you're doing the racket, you can get everyone to do that. Presenting that. So that's the one. So you have to do everyone.
My cousin hasn't come.
And there's also one more. I'm not going to do like
Alright, 2 minutes. Do you want to bring them in now?
Yeah. Guys, if you could just make it, you can come back to your feet. Sorry if you haven't done that. I was found. Oh, I'm sorry. It's fine. So, is there anyone that wants to share their interesting facts? Who found you? What your facts was? If anyone wants to come up and share it, share your interest. Yeah. What yours was? Do you want to come up here?
That's interesting. Savannah plays 6 instruments.
Savannah plays 6 instruments. Wow. Anyone else? Or should I ask like what your facts were?
Yeah. Why don't we say which fact we have?
Yeah, say okay, yeah. But do you want to come up here?
And read the one that I picked up?
Yeah.
Sure. Like, I picked up, even though I come across as energetic, is to compensate for my nerves and talking to others, and there are 2 on here that also says, I tried to end my life in the past, which is not great, but the person is still here, and I'm still here and alive, and here and alive to make an airplane, so I'm, good thing.
Okay, yeah, that is really positive, encouraging. That was quite a lot though. Yeah, it's good to know that we're still here. We're doing okay. On a lighter note, do you want me to share my one?
Yeah.
So I used to like bake cakes to make money so I could buy shoes.
Why are you laughing? It's sick.
No, I know. Yeah, in like secondary school and sixth form. I really liked watching Cake Boss and I wanted to be like Buddy the Astro. So there's my one.
How many shoes did you end up buying?
Well, I mean, I got these, got my Jordans, got some other ones, but, yeah, got my Dr. Martens as well, why not? But yeah, thank you so much for contributing, everyone. I think we've achieved the aim of that task, which was, to get more of an open environment, get everyone talking, everyone feels a bit more relaxed now. So yeah, thank you so much for participating.
So, at YDWC, we like interaction. We want people to get involved. We want people to have a say in what's going on right here, right now. Hence, the Imperial ACS, or one of their representatives, they're here to hopefully give us some of that. Give us a chance to actually get more involved in this, as although we've got involvement so far, we want to boost it up even higher. Hence, we've got a virtual poll coming up, which will be hosted by Manuela from the Imperial ACS. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. So my name is Manuela, I attend Imperial and I'm the treasurer, and this is...
My name is Darius, I also attend Imperial and I am vice president.
Yes. So we've got a little bit of a virtual poll coming up, and the whole idea is sort of there'll be a question on the board and you can answer your put your answer into Menti, and then we'll discuss it and be more like discussive and interactive. So the first question, Darius will be taking that on board.
So our first question, as you can see, what does our theme Black Imperial but our work course mean to you? So for me, where I interpret that is like the whole idea of Black excellence. So that can put a lot of like unnecessary pressure on us as individuals. I know, like for me myself, I sort of like have that like idea that I have to like constantly be best. I have to like show that like I deserve. I also plays into like imposter syndrome. I have to show like I deserve to be here. I also have to like show that I have to like by being here show that like everyone else after me can also be here. I have to attain so everyone else can attain, and that's a lot to put on someone, especially when you start thinking like that, just like 14 or 15, that's a lot of pressure to put on someone from that age, and then that grows with them.
Right.
So I feel like it just is a lot, and it's something we need to like work through as a community.
What do you guys think? Does anyone have any opinions on the question?
Yeah.
Got one up there. So feeling that anything that's not success, perfection is failure. That's strong.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Do you want us to
Definitely
go
accurate.
in the thingy?
Yeah, you can also like speak
You can
up,
also
put your
just
hand
speak,
up.
yeah.
You wanna like talk.
So I was typing into the
Mentally.
Yeah, I just said it halfway through. But it's about, to me, it's about the idea of black people having to perform to a standard of excellence that one goes beyond what is expected of white peers and white counterparts,
Right.
but also it's almost the point where you take away the concept of being human from a black person. So and it's done by sort of we've got really these machines that have to just sort of keep working and keep going, and there's no consideration for our mental and physical well-being outside of the context of what we can do to serve the concept of blackness, and that to show that black people are worthy in a way.
Yeah, I get you. Do you think there's a reason why that narrative has been like set for us as a community?
I don't know what other people think, but I think it's to do with a few things. I think that obviously I think it's entrenched in racism and the experiences of generations before us and our own that would suggest that we aren't good enough and don't have access to spaces of excellence that other people do and other races do, despite us also having the talent there and the work that would say that. But equally, I think it's to do with sort of the idea that our ancestors all around the world sort of fought really hard for us to be here today. It's the idea that we shouldn't waste that.
I agree, 100%.
Whereas, in fact, you could suggest that maybe we're wasting it by performing to a standard that we don't necessarily. It's not sustainable. Maybe we're wasting it by not being happy or prioritizing our mental health rather than trying to perform this black excellence that may not be achievable.
Like the ones on the board as well, expectations and pressures on the black community, you're not allowed to fail. That's true.
I definitely feel that one. Definitely feel that, especially for my parents. My gosh.
Yeah.
But, it's a tough one.
True.
So on to the next question that we have on the board. Yeah, so what are some common sayings in the black community that are used when dealing with negativity in life? Like remove, it's what it is, you know what I'm saying? Like those type of things. What would you guys think? What do you think?
I feel like I want to hear from my mom quite a lot. Like when someone says something, it's like don't mind them, or
Don't
just,
mind them.
Yeah, don't mind them.
100%, I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Any others? Any other examples? What do you think?
I know my personal mantra is it is what it is.
It is what it is.
I just keep it stepping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
keep it stepping.
All
Like
is
it's live, it's live. Like, that's just live. That's how
What else have we got? All is well. God work. That God one isn't. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there negativity or is it more?
having a positive outlook on it.
I think good intention, I think it's often said as a substitute for practical action. As in,
Right.
Yes.
don't do anything about it, but we'll use his magic wand and take care
Yeah,
of it.
but then God works for you at the same time a lot of the time, so it's not always just about you just leave it be, you know? That's what I think. And what do you
And I
think?
think you could have faith in it's nice to turn towards that faith when
Mhm.
you're having a hard time, but equally, what needs to come of that is also it's used as a way to dismiss the feeling. It needs to come with an acknowledgement that like maybe this will work out and like faith can play a role in that, but
Mhm.
equally I accept that this is how you're feeling right now. What can we do to help that work out?
Yeah,
And that's not taken into consideration. So I
Yeah.
think it's not negative on the surface, but if you think about it deeper, but it definitely is.
That's good. I want to just like look at this one. I've been through worse, and you can do this. I hate hearing that. Like,
Yeah. Also
this is
now,
my
like,
situation, you know.
Now
then
when I
you're
was
kind of
growing up
comparing
on,
different-
when I started telling how many miles I used to walk to school.
Yes.
Oh.
I heard that. Oh my
I don't
God.
know, so everything I'm gonna say.
It's like you're dismissing the other person's
Exactly.
problems. It's not fair to them. Like they're trying to express themselves to you, and you're not taking the time to actually like give them the space to be comfortable with you.
And it's also very invalidating because it's like, okay, if like my parents don't even think like what I'm going through is important, then like who else is going to?
Yeah, those are your parents at the biggest cause in your life. They
Yeah.
can't see that. How anyone else in a sense. We go to the next section, please. So this one is more getting you guys to think about how exactly mental health affects the Black community. So this is basically a collage of different mental health statistics specific to the Black community. but then some of them are actually incorrect and have the false stat. I want you guys to like identify which one's actually wrong. So from like looking at it firsthand, which ones do you think are the red herrings? Yeah,
Black Lives Matter has no impact on mental health in the black community.
yeah, that was a quite obvious one. Anyone else? Yeah.
COVID-19 enforcement and policing disproportionately affects young black women.
What do you think it should be?
Just the whole black community, not just black women.
Interesting.
Or ethnic minority community.
I think it's like,
I think that's
yeah, I've literally seen like videos, like the video that's circulating on Instagram of you, like, I think it was last week, of
Yeah.
the guy who was basically like being strangled by that police officer.
That's
demonstrating he wasn't
insane.
wearing a mask.
He wasn't wearing a mask and they were strangling him.
And the police officer took off his mask last year.
Are you being
Yeah,
serious?
it's like if you want to actually help, why are you not handing out masks?
Yeah.
It just love to me. So what else do people think?
I think those are the only ones that are correct.
Okay. I can reveal the real ones to you.
I think there's
Black
something
women
wrong
is correct as well.
Maybe. So the white ones, the ones that would change to the correct stat, and the blacks are the ones that are already correct. And I put references there, so if I'm not making it up, you can see the reference. So yeah, so you were correct. Black Lives Matter. But that one was incorrect. It did actually bring attention to how mainstream mental health services fail black people. And then you said the correct one on the right there about it's not young black women, it's young black men, which is interesting to see. But I think what stood out to me the most was that the average change in mental health among women doesn't actually vary amongst ethnicities. I thought for black women it would have varied the most because there's always like this narrative of the strong black woman and such, but then it wasn't represented in the stats, which is quite surprising to me. What do you think?
Yeah, but couldn't you argue that's because society doesn't see black women as having mental health?
That's
So
true. That's true.
They don't fit in the statistics.
I believe that's true. What else? Is there anything else that stands out to you surprising, or something that wasn't as surprising when you see it now?
Wasn't surprising because I knew this. But what about black Caribbean peoples? 2 times as like permanently excluded compared to the white people. I think it's not surprising, but I think that conversation doesn't carry it over into when you get to university. If you actually look at how many like the number of black Caribbean people in university,
Right.
That conversation is never carried over to that, where
This one at the top here.
yeah,
Black Caribbean
so
peoples.
even if you look at black communities in university, they're often more likely black African communities,
That's
or
true.
black British or African diaspora,
Yeah.
66%, and they're often not black African communities, and that's not considered how, in fact, if you disenfranchise the black Caribbean people from education, of course that has effects on mental health. I think that conversation isn't had at all, never mind enough.
Yeah, the disproportion, yeah. I think even at Imperial ACS, we don't have a lot
Yeah, we
of
have, like,
Caribbean students. Yeah, I think that's quite a common sort of trend with like universities that are at the top of league table. I really wonder why that is.
And I think also because there are probably not only 3 black Caribbean students in the whole of Imperial,
Yeah.
because they just think like, oh, it's basically Nigerian society.
Yeah.
So they don't bother like joining in, and they're just happy to like find their own spaces elsewhere.
Yeah. Because I'm actually Cameroonian, but like I think most of my friends are actually Nigerian. So I don't have a problem with it. I love them so much. But then sometimes I do love them. But then sometimes there is that sort of space where having that same sort of level of connection and relating to them isn't the same because we don't have the same culture. And I think, especially from the Caribbean point of view, that's probably something they feel as well. What do you guys think? Go ahead.
Well, I was for a holiday and I'm from the Caribbean,
Right.
and there aren't many Caribbean people at Royal Holiday.
Yeah.
It's mostly African people.
Yeah.
If you, on the odd chance you find a black person there.
Exactly.
So it's like I feel like we connect on a level, but not on the same level that I would connect with other Caribbean.
Precisely
It's a
that.
bit-
Yeah.
I kind of feel a bit excluded.
I get you. Who are you going to say?
I was going to say yes, I'm Caribbean as well, and I think when there's a disproportionate amount of like Africans and Caribbeans, it almost creates this template of what like a black identity is,
Right.
not just in our own space as black people, even what white people have of us, in terms of what they expect people to be like or how they communicate or their upbringing. When it's like it can be so varied, and what's sad is that it creates an exclusion even amongst black people. So it's like, for example, I know like being at Cambridge, it was like initially I didn't enjoy things like the ACS because I was like, it's just not, I'm not going to find people who really get where I'm coming from. It's going to be like Cambridge, definitely, it's as African central as opposed to Caribbean central. I always say that that's the real minorities, like Caribbeans, obviously Black people are a minority as well. But I think it can definitely lead to this exclusion. It can lead to like almost a group identity that you don't feel like you fit into, and then you find yourself being not only excluded from the institution and racially excluded, but also amongst your own people. But also what I find is that we can sometimes enter into spaces searching for connections amongst our own race, and sometimes that hinders us from also exploring connections with other people because we're so fixated on we need to survive, we need to find people like us, and it hinders us from finding people who are completely different to us, but actually we might connect more, maybe we grew up in the same area, single parent background, like it could be so many different things, we're passionate about your subject. So I think for me it was really understanding that, okay, cool, I'm an ethnic minority at Cambridge, but it doesn't just have to be Black people that I feel safe amongst, and it was really through that exclusion that's where I kind of changed my perspective on how I was going to socialise there, and I can say that it's definitely beneficial to sometimes, that's the positive, I guess, of not finding inclusion necessarily amongst your own race. But
That's such an impressive answer. Wow, really impressive. Anything else anyone wants to talk about or is surprised by? Go on.
The Black Caribbean pupils stat, I'd say I definitely saw that and experienced that.
Right.
But it's not that I don't think it's funny. Is there like a reason why, in particular, Black Caribbean pupils
I don't think you mentioned it in the report. What do you think the reason could be?
Because then, when I look back on like my secondary school experience, I'm literally putting like the pieces together in my mind, and I'm realizing like, especially with the university thing, a lot of us are in and because I went to such a diverse secondary school with such a range of people, a lot of us are in university, and I literally cannot put my mind on one Caribbean person that ended up going to uni or a Russell Group uni.
Yeah, I agree with that. What were you going to say?
As a Black Caribbean student who's been very close to being permanently excluded, but I wasn't. In my secondary school, I feel like the reason is because a lot of the time it's not just Caribbean, it's Africans too, but a lot of the time we're more likely to have single parent backgrounds. Yeah. And the teachers, I feel like they exploit that. Because often the parents won't have time to be on the school and that kind of thing. So I feel like the teachers, they exploit the fact that we're more likely to have this background, and they just think, okay, so we can kind of do what we want and get away with more things because the parents won't speak up. And also, going back to the university thing, I think me and my sister were the only Black Caribbeans in our year to go to university.
That's insane.
Yeah, that went to our school, and our school was fairly diverse. Yeah, it wasn't the best, but it was like pretty good. And yeah, I think we are. And then to be fair, there were quite a few Black Caribbean people in our year. Oh God, there's one more Nigerian. She's not university yet. Oh, she's not. No, is she else?
To be fair, from like an African point of view, I think it's kind of drilled into you since you were born. You have to go to university. You have to go to university. Is that something that's in the Caribbean background as well? Like, do you guys get drilled from birth? Like, you have to go to university, you have to get educated. Yeah. What are your views on that?
Any other Caribbean?
Yeah.
You can go.
I really don't mind.
No, I was just gonna say, I think like one thing that is important when I do like social science stuff, always like address this and trying to like think about reasons behind why there's this difference between Africans and Caribbeans. I think one thing to consider is like how long Caribbeans have been here and how long Africans have been here. In terms of like we're probably like 1 or 2 generations ahead. Like I know my great granddad, so yeah, he came here. So for example, there's like 4 generations here. And I think that familiarity and I guess comfortability with being in the UK, there's not as much of this drive for like go. Do you know what I mean? In terms of we need to make it now. Like if you don't make it, there's nothing to fall back on here in terms of like let's put family here. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think where African generations are like a bit further behind, it's a bit like you're the first here, this is your opportunity, we've come here for you, so you need to now make this change, you need to be a change. So I think in that sense, it's definitely a familiarity, but also because Caribbeans were here for a longer time, I think there was stigmatizations of Caribbean groups, whether that was like in the 70s or the 60s, as like Rastas, or I just feel like because they've experienced more, it's kind of generated a complacency and a more of a resentment towards the system, which perhaps wasn't as much of the experience of like Africans who are like now here, and I guess obviously it's more of a tolerant society in terms of that sense. Obviously, there's still stigmatizations that the whole race faces, but I think there's more resentment sometimes of Caribbeans because of what they feel like they've experienced.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
That's really good.
Yeah.
You're really good at talking.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, that's really good.
More like.
Oh.
You had your hand up.
I was gonna say something, but I didn't want to take the spotlight away from the Caribbean students. I was just gonna say, like, just in general, when it comes to being misunderstood as a black student in education in this country, I would like keeping with the topic of mental health. Like, a lot of black students who are neurodivergent aren't recognized, and the symptoms are seen as like being talkative, being aggressive, being disruptive, and they don't make the connection between perhaps the student needs more support. They just say, okay, the student is a disturbance, a distraction, and they need to go. And I think that's obviously reflective of like wider society and the way they view black people as like in two boxes. You're either someone who's going to comply or someone who's going to rebel. There is no space for there to be any nuance between that. And I feel like they import that into young people. And so like even how many people I've encountered now who are being diagnosed with all sorts like autism, ADHD, all of that now, and they're like in university when they're 20.
Yeah, when it's kind of
they
late.
went through their entire sixth form education without any help because nobody recognized that, okay, this student is disorganized, this student shows up late, but perhaps there's something deeper than this student just being crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's what they expect. They expect, okay, you're black, you're a woman, you don't really want to work, like that's why you're not working in there. They give me attitude because you're rude. Like it's never, okay, let me actually see there's something you need. It's never, are you okay? It's always okay. Now you have to leave. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Just following on from your point, which I think is really, really important, valuable, if not invaluable. But one of the things that compounds that problem even further is the resistance within our communities to accepting our children with those kind of diagnoses.
Oh yeah.
I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in my 30s, and upon being at uni and getting phenomenal support from the faculty at the University of Westminster, in my early 40s, I was diagnosed with dyslexia and dyspraxia on top. And I will never forget when I called my mom, who's now 85 today, to tell her that I've been diagnosed with ADHD and I'm seeing a psychiatrist and I'm being trying some medication to see what best works for me. Her response was, Lord God, your life finished! You might not understand my Jamaican vernacular. Oh my gosh, your life is over. And I speak to so many parents now across the communities who, when they're told that their child has ADHD and they're talking about medication and stuff, it's like conspiracy theories just jumping out the window.
Yeah.
And my child having none of that, so they then pull them up because nothing came wrong with them. And yet we're still feeding our kids all those foods that will help to support the negative side of those that disability or that neurodiverse needs. So the processed foods, the sweets, the juices, and all the rest of it. So the child's getting a double whammy. And that we're talking about exclusion of our children as well. It's part of the problem because if you're not taking the medication that can help to level out the brain, have the chemicals flowing the way that they would in a normal person, then you're having that imbalance. Plus all the sugars and the processed foods and all the rest of it. What you're doing is you're making your child become a ticking time bomb and just setting them up to become a true victim of the system. And also a barrier for other people around them who are trying to learn who don't necessarily have the same problems. But it now becomes a thing where they're being distracted by somebody who doesn't have the ability to control themselves in the classroom environment.
Yeah. Thank you for that view. Go on.
Kind of had a similar experience. Doing
Leave.
So it was kind of, they mentioned medication for ADHD with me, and my mum was kind of like, they're not putting you on any medication, you don't know what it's going to do to you, it's not going to help. And she kind of just dismissed the idea.
Right.
She's not very with the medication itself.
Yeah.
But I think the problem here, one of the reasons why we find that black people are often diagnosed with neurodivergent conditions much later in life than the white counterparts is that there's a few things. If the community aren't willing to engage with the concept of this actually being a reality for many people, we don't get enough research and attention that looks into how these conditions present in people of different cultural backgrounds. And so, like, all the research on things like ADHD and autism and OCD and things like that, and Tourette's, are done on small white boys. And so, whilst the conditions themselves aren't any different, the neurodivergent in brains are any different, how they present in different people are different based on how you're socialized. And so, if we're not as a community opening up the conversation and sort of making it a bit more visible that these are conditions that we're faced with, it's not like we can't, unfortunately, we can't expect that from the mainstream sort of racially biased institutions, and we know we're not getting that. And so if we're not also sort of feeding that as a community, then we're never going to get the visibility that we need in order to actually see and raise awareness about how these conditions are presented within Black people.
Yeah.
They do come out differently based on cultural and social needs and interactions.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think just to like add on, because I think another big problem is, like you said, research isn't being done, which also affects like access. Because one of my very good friends, she like me, she grew up in Nigeria, and she has ADHD. And for like her entire life, it was just like, oh, you're lazy, you don't want to do work, you're disorganized, like problem child basically. And then she's come here, she's after like 3 years of fighting with her parents, like actually let her not even like get on medication, just like go to therapy. That was a battle like in and of itself, and then she finally did that, and then she was put on medication. But then even then, like her parents were still making like snide comments like, you're dosing up, you're like pumping yourself with drugs, like you're messing yourself up. And I remember she told me recently she was on a call with like her family, and she hadn't taken her medication that day yet, so she was a bit like a bit erratic that day. And she was like, oh, like it's because I haven't taken my medication yet, that's why I'm behaving like this. And her dad was like, oh, and this made no sense whatsoever, of course. Her dad was like, oh, if you're acting like this because of the medication, then you have to stop. But if you're acting like this because of the medication, you have to stop. But if you're acting like this because you haven't taken the medication yet, then we love you like this. And it was just the most confusing, like,
Yeah, I'm trying to connect
and it's just like they find so many ways to just refuse to see like Black neurodivergent students or like people or just in general, and it's it's a lot. Yeah. I guess, does anyone have anything else on that?
How to handle your emotions.
Yeah, so next question, I guess. So how were you taught to handle your emotions during your upbringing?
Can I start?
Yeah.
I think being the eldest, as well. Things were like, I know for like the not weakness. So yeah, like praying it will go away basically. That kind of vibe, like you're not allowed to show weakness, and showing emotion is a sign of weakness basically.
I think for me, I mean they stopped now because I would say like objectively compared to like the average Nigerian parents, my parents are like better in terms of that, but better is not really. Yeah. So one for me it was also like an expression thing, but mine was very like weird in that they would be like just like me talking like about anything, like, oh, you talk too much. Like especially they'd be like, oh, you're a man, why are you talking so much? Like you talk too much for a man, are you a woman? And it's just again, it doesn't make sense. Objectively speaking, it doesn't make sense, but that doesn't stop there. And yeah, and then also like in school, because for me, so I started uni at 17, so like for my entire like education career, I've been like 1 year younger than like everyone else. And in Nigeria, like seniority culture is like a very, very big thing. Like it's like respect your elders, someone's older than you. So like even just within my year, it was like I had to like this isn't just like my parents' upbringing, this was also like society brings you up. And like societal upbringing, like within my like school community, I had to like constantly like put in like actual conscious and like consistent efforts, like consistent better than everybody else, so I could like get that same level of respect as my peers. If not, then like I would notice the difference in the way I was treated, like significantly. And this is even just like within Black people. Like this was in Nigeria. So yeah.
Cool.
I remember at some point this year, Bernard told me that it's okay to cry. But the thing is, even when his mom passed away, so even when my grandma passed away years ago, I never saw him cry. So I think it's very difficult for me to think that it's acceptable for me to, I guess, show emotion when I haven't seen the supposed leader of the house do so.
Like representation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen my dad cry either.
That's fair. No. So it's kind of like passed down generations. So how do we actually go about breaking that, I suppose? I think you had your hand up first. Or?
Just to quickly introduce myself, I'm the late comer. Everyone call me Aggie. I'm a mature student. I'm with these two glorious individuals representing Cambridge doing healthcare data. But in terms of the question, I don't know about anybody else, but essentially I was taught, and I was the last born and only girl. So from my perspective, if anybody who could be as emotional as hell, it would have been me. Last born, only girl, free reign. It wasn't really the case though, but it was more about we're private. So it was under the cloak of privacy. We don't talk about our business. So growing up for me in terms of handling your emotions, it was basically keeping to yourself. That was the message. But it was not because there was anything wrong to express yourself, but it was more because we're private and we're dignified and we don't just speak out our business. So I guess I internalized a lot. But having said that, the safety net was I had such a great relationship, and I hope some of you here do too, with my family members. So my father, my mother. So that was always a very safe outlet. But like one of my colleagues said, the issue then comes to so I went to boarding school and then I went to university. So when you're no longer in that inner circle, who do you speak to?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. What did you want to add?
For me, it was kind of like you have a roof over your head, got food, that kind of thing.
What more could you want?
Yeah, what more could you want? Is kind of you've got no reason to feel emotions, feel sad, depressed, etc. Just like get on with it.
I was gonna add that I think like a lot of us have like dragged our parents today. And, I think upon reflection, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's their fault. And I say that because, for example, with me, my dad moved to this country and then brought us up here. And I think we had the vocabulary and the awareness to explain the feelings that we go through now. But for example, our parents who migrated here, it's natural that they would have felt anxiety. There's times where they would have been wondering, how am I going to get a job? How am I going to get this? And the type of like oppression they would have felt in the UK compared to what we feel now, it's a different type. But it would have been something serious, and it would have impacted their mental health. Of course it would. But I feel that they didn't have the tools at the time, especially because of our culture, to express that and to deal with it. And so a lot of the times we just get passed down that trauma of being like in an alien environment and having to work 3-4 times harder than your peers, and you know what I mean. So I think we're not taught how to handle our emotions because I don't think they know how to either. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I think wanted to add on to Princess's point. I think it's true. Of course, my parents probably want to handle their emotions, but I think the frustration within me can come from the fact that I think I'd want to see more of an attempt from them. I guess I'd want them to begin to break the chain, and of course I could continue to break the chain for my children. But I'd want to see more effort from them to, I guess, eradicate the trauma that they face, so that I'm less likely to pass on to my kids.
I think a lot of time from their perspective, they're trying to see it in a sense of they want to look strong. So it's probably not that they're not trying to teach us how to overcome these emotions. They actually want to show us how to be determined and ambitious and not let ourselves be put down by our problems. That's probably their perspective from it. What do you think?
I feel like also, so I feel like people to remember that like they didn't have the time to go to the GP and be like,
Yeah.
anxiety,
Yeah.
because they didn't have the capacity to take time off work. Like, I feel like the situation they were in was much more urgent and much more intense. And so I feel like the fact that you said that we have now the space and the vocabulary and the opportunity to understand ourselves because of the sacrifice that they made is really important. And so as much as it's like, yeah, my parents had to do it, because I actually internalized that as well. I was like, my mom was pregnant and she got first from university. I didn't get SE and I'm crying. But literally, it's like, you have to remember that like, you have the capacity now to actually look inwardly and heal yourself. You don't have to barrel through challenges in the same way they had to, because if they didn't, they had children who they couldn't be. Whereas if you don't, like, what's the worst thing that will happen when you take a year of university?
Yeah.
So the stakes are different.
Thank you. Yeah, so moving on to the next question. I just want to see, how do you guys actually approach like dealing with situations with your friends and family? What advice would you give to them? How would you help them overcome their situations? Go on.
Well, for me, I give my honest opinion, regardless of how it will make them feel. I will try to do it in a way that wouldn't, if what I'm going to say could hurt them, I would try to do it in a way that would reduce the pain and hurt. But I always like to be honest, because I wouldn't want to like sell them dreams kind of thing, or make them feel like in a way that would make them not process what they're feeling. Or I always tell them how it is kind of thing. So if they've told me about a story that's happened and they've been hurt or they're in the wrong, I'll always just tell them.
Because at the end of the line doesn't really help in any way. Like, you might maybe feel better in the short term, but at the end of the day, like that only lasts for so long. And also, I think for me also, what I try to do is like also like you, honesty, like just obviously being like as kind as I can, like with that honesty, but also like at the same time I make that I like to be that friend that is always like, anything that happens at any step of like whatever you're going through, please come to me. Like just always making them know that like you are very, very, very much there for them. That's what I find works best.
Yeah.
And sometimes what people need is like a listening ear. So.
That's okay. I think it's also important to mention that you being there for them isn't necessarily actually solving their problem. Sometimes it's just a matter of being in their space, giving them that sort of signal that, hey, like I'm here if you need me, I'm there for you. And they may not actually want to tell you exactly what's wrong, but having you there and knowing that you're there to love them and appreciate them through whatever they're going through will definitely help them to overcome whatever they're going through. What do you think?
Completely agree with that. I mean, from the older I get, the more I realise that most people who actually come to me, they're not asking me to fix, but my natural mode is to try and fix. But also, context is everything. So if they're in a difficult, dangerous scenario, which could sort of, be a threat to their life or anything like that, then yes, honesty first. But I do think it's also just about gauging, actually reading the people and just reading the person, the friend or the family member, because sometimes they might not even be in a position to even know what they want from you. And so at times, and people are saying all this kind of stuff a lot, but asking permission or asking people what do they want in this space? Do you want just a listening ear, or do you want a problem solved? And getting their advice, that's the best thing. But from my perspective, definitely, one of my closest friends who's actually here today, it took them years to tell me that I try and fix things too much for them. And they just wanted to sort of, just for me to listen. So sometimes it can take them off that page as well.
And then we'll go to the last question, please.
So just in general, or how would you say your perspective of mental health has evolved since being at uni?
I think I've looked at it more practically since being at uni. So my perspective of mental health in itself hasn't evolved, but I've been conscious of making an effort to ensure that I'm in a safe space. When I'm drained, I can like go back and recharge, and I know like patterns that I can avoid and behaviors and places that I should avoid in order to keep myself in a good space. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've come across a lot of sayings that I think are, I guess, platitudinal and somewhat generic, like sayings like, be kind, be nice, you don't know what people are going through, which of course that's all true, but I don't always see them being deployed in every scenario. I feel like it's a pick and choose. In terms of overcoming that, I'm not too sure, but yeah.
I think for me, it's just been a thing of like, since I started saying it's more of a thing of like awareness, like just like what I said about like secondary school and always having to like the entire time I was even up to like sixth form, I didn't realize that that was what I was doing. But then as I came to uni, I've like gotten just more educated in general about like all like different mental health issues. I realized like the place I was at before, and yes, I've come out of it, but like just like being aware of that and like processing that, and even just like people like I can't remember her name. Huh? Like Monica said about like people also just getting diagnosed now. Lots of my peers are just getting like lots of my neurodivergent peers are just getting diagnosed now. So that's also like a level of awareness, like things that you thought like, oh, that's just the way they are. You realize like, oh, there's a deeper reason for everything, really. And I feel like in coming to uni, I've begun to realize that.
Yeah. And then for me, I think one thing I definitely learned from first year is that mental health is also about how you treat yourself physically, like the amount of hours of sleep that you get, your diet, and how much alone time you have just to like spend that time to love yourself, get to know yourself. And that all feeds into how your mental health will be. I never realized that until first year just kicked my ass. I was like, damn, like I need to start sleeping properly. And then I think a lot of the time we need to like consider all these factors that go into mental health, not just about how you feel emotionally, also about how you feel physically as well. But yeah, thank you for engaging in our virtual poll. I hope you enjoyed that. And thank you. It was really fun.
Thank you.
That was pretty cool. Right, so before we jump into our next session, we're gonna have a short 2-minute break and then we'll get straight back into things. Thank you.
Yes,
Guys, just quickly, just check. This is the number one. This is the Yinka. This is the Kina.
Where's Princess? I found Horatio, my plane fell here.
Oh.
That's why I was neglected.
Guys, we're gonna start again soon. We can all get back to our seats. Yeah, shut. Oh, go for it, man.
I found my plane. Right, guys, let's start in the next section.
She's gonna come in 25 minutes. With you. Yeah. Are we sitting on the couch? Can we sit? That's right.
There's only 4 chairs. Can I grab another one?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, quick thing.
She's short. I don't want kind of
Oh, I do politics and sociology. Criminology and sociology. Yeah. Look at us, eh? Who would have thought?
So, hiya. So, I'm Savannah, as you can see. I do German at Oxford. I'm second year and been working with Sister Veronica and also at Oxford. to bring this panel to you today. We essentially will have an open discussion about different mental health issues. We've done this sort of thing among the ACS before, but about different topics and more broader topics, and we thought it would be good to bring it here. We are like the panel today. I'll let everyone introduce themselves.
Yeah, so as Savannah so kindly introduced, I am Monica. I'm the senior welfare officer, one of the senior welfare officers in the Oxford ACS. And we usually hold like this thing called Ox Chat, and it's like, it sounds cringe, but it's not. It's like we just sit and we talk about topics that are topical, that particularly affect Black community, Black students, and like the position that Black students in Oxford are in. And we're just hoping to bring this to you today with the topic about mental health. So yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Princess. I'm the welfare officer at Nottingham ACS.
I forgot to say that I'm welfare and eligibility officer for ACS.
Hi everyone, my name is Yinka. I'm the senior welfare officer for Cambridge. I'm a second year after history and politics, and yeah, that's it.
Hey, I'm Junior. I study biomedical engineering at King's. After my liaison with the King's ACS, I thought to provide insight with regard to Black men's perspective on mental health issues.
Right, so I think we'll get started then. So just so people online know and the people here, is that you can use the mental code and mental.com code if you want to respond here, or it's a good way to connect with two audiences, but weekly you can, and if you're here, you can just record. That's also welcome. So our first question is about imposter syndrome, and essentially it is imposter syndrome, a feeling that you've experienced before. So you can either put your hand up and speak, say yes or no, or unsure, or you can use the tablet. Just a quick yes or no to get a feel for what people think. Like for me, I know that on the yes. So you can do thumbs up, thumbs down. So far, we're getting a resounding yes. We're all victims, is what I think. Imposter syndrome works hard, no one escapes. Which, I mean, I think tells a story within itself, especially around Black people, marginalised people, sort of be thinking about how you fit into certain spaces, whether that be spaces in academic settings, like universities and schools, or within like jobs, or even like whether you, I think it's not spoken about enough about whether you fit spaces within like groups of friends, like social spaces. Like there can be an element of imposter syndrome in that way, like whether you're quite the right friend or what it is, as well as within the more traditional academic, professional settings. That'll just get a feel, and I think the feel is pretty clear. So if we can move on to sort of just discuss this more, so you can use the Mendy platform to respond, but if you're in the room with us as well, you're welcome to just speak to talk about how do you deal with imposter syndrome, given that I think we've all said we felt it. Okay.
I don't. We move, yeah.
Well, that opens up the conversation about whether we think we move is the correct response there. Like, what comes from sort of this brushing it off? Like for me, I think I don't know what anyone else thinks. Please people chime in. But I think the response of we move is very characteristic within the sort of Black community itself. That you do just have to push these into society and keep going, especially things like imposter syndrome, and almost by I think specifically with imposter syndrome, I think by ignoring it and we move and not dealing with it, you make the imposter syndrome itself worse because it continues to fester. And it's not something that, like the response of we move is suggesting that you can ignore it, but you can't because you're still within the same space which this imposter syndrome is like festering. You're still within that space, so by ignoring it, you're not actually, you can't ignore the problem because the problem is still staring at you and going, hi, hello, I'm here.
It's not if I jump in very quickly. A part of me thinks that maybe that we move thing may not necessarily be a bad thing, only if that we move mentality causes you to run in even faster to that thing that's causing you to feel imposter syndrome. So let's say you're going to do something that of course give you imposter syndrome if that gloomy mentality just causes you to approach it with enthusiasm and energy and causes you to, I guess, overcome in a sense. It could be a good thing, I want to say. Yeah.
So
You can go first, please.
I think at its core, imposter syndrome is feeling inadequate, is feeling less than everybody else who's around you. And I feel like people cope with that by overcompensating. And then of course, if you're in a position when you're overcompensating constantly, so you're constantly overperforming, overachieving, that's exhausting. So you're going to eventually burn out. And I feel like that's how many people deal with imposter syndrome. Either that or people just kind of break down and they kind of, the fear is too much that they don't attempt. For fear of failure, they just decide that it's not worth it, and so you don't attempt. And so it's such a like destructive emotion, because it's like it can either cause you to exhaust yourself or to not fulfill or not, what's the word, achieve your potential.
Okay, so first of all, could everybody talk as loud as Junior? Okay, I'm the person in the back. Junior should set sorry, just because I don't want to miss anything anyone's saying. But in terms of imposter syndrome, so as well as being a part-time student, it happens to be that I'm a doctor. There is a perception that doctors might have huge amounts of confidence, etc., etc. So I can't express to you over the last probably 24 months, so even pre-pandemic, the amount of sort of CPDs, so continual professional development modules, that doctors specifically are having exactly on this imposter syndrome. So ergo, you know, we're all human beings, everybody to some extent in every sort of caveat feels it. In terms of how I deal with it, I'll be honest, the older I've gotten, I've embraced it. And what I found is that by embracing it, it almost becomes a superpower. The more I speak about my vulnerabilities, the more I'm finding I almost get an army behind me. And then, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just being a lot more open, but also owning it, but also being open to what it means, how to resolve it, you know, all of those kind of things, rather than owning it and being, yes, it's my right to feel inadequate, it's fine. So, but just being open, that openness, and I'm feeling the people who you're really meant to, who are meant to both support you and be supported by you, will be attracted by that. Anyone else in some ways doesn't really matter.
I see that it's interesting because we've kind of got two different takes on the same thing about whether the imposter syndrome can develop into something that is good. I know like Junior's take is always that if you can continue to run headfirst into something, if you take the sort of we move and run headfirst, then it's positive anyway. But here we've slightly different that says, I don't know, I find that the Junior's take it's almost that's not sustainable in my opinion. Like even if you keep running forward, you're still trying to prove yourself. You're still running into something to say that I need to prove that I'm enough rather than that I'm already enough. And that I think that is quite probably your take is almost that actually embracing the fact that this is a feeling that I feel, yes, I'm allowed to feel it, but also actually let me create a space of vulnerability, which sort of leads on to what we have here about like positive affirmations and sort of if you're by talking about it, like talk to your friends and creating that space, I don't know, you're almost by embracing the imposter syndrome, you're almost killing it off at the same time. I don't know if anyone else agrees or disagrees with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh, no, it's all right.
Yeah, so kind of similar to what Ken said. I think one of the most important things when it comes to like dealing with imposter syndrome is being able to like manage the truth, like the reality, and manage the voice of your fears. Because I feel like the voice of our fears can sometimes dominate our mind, and that fuels this feeling of inadequacy, of imposter syndrome. But once you actually acknowledge that it's actually there, and you're able to distinguish between the truth about you being able to actually get into, for example, like an institution in a Russell Group, like a Russell University, the fact that you're able to even get there in the first place means that you're able to sustain, be sustained in that place. So being able to manage that truth and then also manage the truth, I mean, not the truth, the voice of your fears that is telling you that you don't belong there or that you're not good enough. Once you distinguish between the fact that, yes, your fears will sometimes speak to you, and yes, there is a reality about your ability, you're then able to realize that this might be a battle that will continue throughout your life, but it's something you can manage because you actually acknowledge that there are two sides of the coin. And as humans, we will have conflicting emotions, we will have things that, speak to our insecurities. But it's just so important to recognize the difference and recognize the, I guess, multifaceted nature of our brain and our emotions. So,
I think when it comes to me achieving something, I think usually if I feel nervous towards doing something that I consider ambitious or I consider of high status, usually I feel nervous towards doing that because in my mind, I have no evidence of myself achieving that thing beforehand. Hence, that's why I doubt myself being able to do that. Now, this whole running in towards it, sprinting in towards mentality is to prove to myself that I can do it by actually generating evidence for myself to show that I can do it. And I think that's the only way to actually eradicate the fear. It's not good for me to avoid doing that thing and then think to myself, oh, I probably could have done it anyways. I wouldn't like that. The only way to eradicate that fear that I can't do it is to generate evidence. I think that's the only way I'm going to put that sense of fear and uneasiness to rest.
Doesn't stop you feeling it the next time.
Yeah, generate more.
But then you're still chasing a generation of evidence that is still built the idea that you're inadequate. It still doesn't quite address the fact that you have feelings of inadequacy. Like sleep doesn't help. Feelings of inadequacy it still doesn't address that. You're still just chasing proving it this time and then proving it next time instead of creating the space. I think that the blanket says I know that actually I can feel more comfortable with who I am in my own work.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think in terms of imposter syndrome, I think this is like a more of a personal experience as opposed to a general point. So I'm an only child. I was going to be my fun facts on my airplane, but no one found me, so it's fine. anyway, I'm fine.
Now I get the relevance.
So, yeah, my mum was definitely an encourager for me. Like when I was growing up, I never really doubted my ability. Like she always gave me a great amount of confidence. Like I remember being on sports day. Sorry, little story, and I'm going to go on. But anyway, I won't be like Kenny. I'll talk for a short time. But I remember being in sports day, like being told to come in a white t-shirt, and my mum printed off like a Superwoman logo on mine. It said Sakina, the fastest girl in the world. And I was like, I'm not, but I believed that I was, and I won the race. Like my mum was always very much like, you can do this, and that kind of the energy I took into environments that I went into. But I think for me, and only really addressing this like last year, Inka's my friend, my good friend, my close friend, and really talking to her about the imposter syndrome I felt amongst like Black people. So obviously, I'm actually like I'm half North African and I'm half Caribbean. So when I would walk into rooms, I felt like there was this stigmatization of what I was in terms of the stereotypes that mixed race people have. But I'd grown up only around Black people, so I'd never experienced, I guess, the other side that people thought I had. And it was always dealing with, oh, you think that you're this, or she's probably going to be like this, or her mum's Irish, or like my mum's Jamaican, but it's fine. Like just always having to try and feel like I had to explain myself to Black people in order to feel welcome in that community, because naturally when you walk into a room, there is going to be an assumption based on what you look like. And that imposter syndrome was probably more dangerous to me than anything else, because it was the people that I thought I would feel the most welcome around, including my childhood where I was only around Black people, to then go into university and sixth form and be around Black people and feel that they either saw me as like competition, or they still want to be my friend, or they had these expectations of what I was going to be like. And it was always, oh, I didn't think you were going to be like this. And it was like, well, why? Because my skin's slightly lighter. And of course, I don't negate that there are certain stereotypes and there's some truth to those, but the imposter syndrome amongst Black people was probably the most dangerous. And then that was very like a lot of isolation. And that first point to me in terms of, for a long time, I kept it inside, and I just wouldn't socialize with people because I was like, I don't really have experience of white people. I don't know what they're like. All I know is Black people. So I was like, I don't know who's going to understand me. And then it was really talking to my friends and understanding the value of, it's only the people who are going to take the time to get to know you, who are going to really understand who you are, where you come from, what your childhood was like, what my personality is like, and that's fine. And it was coming to grips with, I'm enough, I can talk to you about how I feel, but also there's a beauty to being fully known by the people around you and know that they actually love you because they've taken the time to get to know you. And that's a great thing in terms of imposter syndrome, when a white person actually asks you about your background and you can feel like, oh wow, like you're actually interested in me. That's the perspective to have, and just valuing those people I think is really useful. So basically accepting your position, but also allowing it to help you find valuable connections is a great thing, I think.
For me, in terms of university, I've always felt like I didn't belong because of how I present, one, and two, just because growing up, I was never the most academic. Well, I got my grades, but I was never the most into academics. Whereas, like, I always compared myself to my twin, who is a lot more academic than me, performed a lot higher at school than me. And even she said to me that you don't look like the type to go to university. You said this to me a while ago.
Oh.
Yeah, you did. You said that to me.
Oh my God.
And then I was like,
I'm sorry, but what's going on here?
Receipts. It is what you said. And then I was like,
Free speech.
and that made me think. And I was like, I don't look like the type, so people often assume that maybe I'm not here on my merit rather than, yeah.
Can you add some context next time? Context.
Why these conversations are so important, so you guys can add context now.
Context, really quickly. Context was a conversation around being Sydney University and how we were talking about your insecurities about it and how you were in school and often had your issues with school, but weren't your fault at all, but you were often shaped in that way, and then it came out with an attitude and the way that you presented and the idea that you weren't typically what people thought someone would go to university. I wasn't saying that you weren't the type to go to university. We were discussing the idea of like elitism and how there's an image of what someone who would go to university is and how you don't match up to the standard image of that because of systemic problems. That I remember the conversation very clearly now. Carry on.
So in terms of what she said, and with me myself being neurodivergent and being part of the LGBT, for me it was like I always felt that I wasn't enough to be at university. But then when Savannah told me that she had faith in me and that she knew that I would get into Royal Holloway, which is where I wanted to go, whereas my Miss Emmett, my head of sixth form, said to me, "You're putting this down as what was the word she used? As an aspirational choice." And I was like, no, not really, but I just said yes so that she would sign off and let me put it down. So for me, it was like people didn't really believe in me, so it made me not believe in myself. And then, yeah, I just felt like when I got to uni and I realised I could actually do this and I actually liked it, it felt more like I belonged.
Like you were affirmed by the environment around you, by the fact that you actually did enjoy it, and also like almost kind of going back to evidence basing. By it's not all bad. I'm not personally trying to discredit it like entirely or at all, but by actually doing it, you have the confirmation that you could do it, and that actually the environment was a place for you, and that even though you had feelings of imposter syndrome and inadequacy, they didn't have to prevail in a way that almost expectations would suggest that they would.
Well, I understand something. I think the wins that you get as someone who's struggling with imposter syndrome are short-lived. So you've got the trophy today because you've accomplished something. As soon as tomorrow comes, you're back to being like a victim all over again. And I feel like to address that or to compensate for it, we have to take the approach of trying to build muscle like when we go to the gym. So for me, I was raised by a generation I'm hoping is at least 2 or 3 generations away from where you guys were being raised by your parents. My father's approach, who meant well, who loved me to death, was to discourage me. You're going to amount to nothing in life. You're going to probably end up in prison. You're going to fail. You're never going to go to university. Why aren't you like your cousins? Why aren't you like such and such down the road? You're the worst of whatever. And that was his hope of pushing me to do better. Don't work. And what I've had to do with myself, even like today, has been weird because I'm sort of trying to prep for today, and I didn't get so well on the prepping because I felt emotional, thinking about other things around my own well-being and how I dealt with my own neurodiverse needs and so forth. And
The one thing that I know has worked for me and is a process I have to continue to do is practicing positive affirmations. So like your mom, I laud your mom for her approach. That I didn't think about super girlfriend. Shut up. For my kids, the one thing that I've said for both of them, my 5-year-old and 2-year-old, is that you can do anything to them. You challenge their self-esteem. You have an issue that I'm going to take off. We do the positive affirmations every day with them. I do it with myself, and that's just to build that muscle, that resilience that allows you to go through that, so that you know I'm in this space because I deserve to be here. And even being around a group of intellectuals like yourself, like we hear from Russell Group universities and so forth, and me, a little struggling, non-academic, young, well, old man now. I'm not saying I lose myself and maintain myself positive things being in this space because I don't feel as comfortable as the spaces where I usually go and speak. I'm still going to rock the socks off of it, but the fact is that the challenge exists and you've got to keep building that muscle by putting those positive affirmations, those positive thoughts, that sense of self-belief and self-worth, and the hashtag that I put on all of my posts on social media is I am enough. Because I've got to reach a place where I believe that I'm not one for faking until you make it, but in terms of my self-confidence, yeah, I'm not comfortable with that.
I think there's something that, so my mentor asked me to read a book, he's he co-founded a social media marketing firm, asked me to read a book on Racing Towards Excellence, and in the book, I think in the chapter, I think it's in the chapter of inspiration, I'm not sure, but there's a concept which is, if you want to, I guess, if you want to be somebody who's doing, let me word this, if you want to, I guess, do a certain thing, act like you are someone who's already doing that thing. So let's say you want to be somebody who, I don't know, is hardworking, or be somebody who is, I don't know, good at networking. Act like you are. I gave it a go, and I feel like it worked. I feel like it was the most effective. As in, probably for a few minutes, I have a go at, trying to be someone who's good at networking, who's good at hardworking. But eventually, I kind of just revert back to the mean, or revert back to the average. Or in this case, I kind of revert back to my usual self. Yeah, just thought that point just came up. Yeah.
I feel like you raised a really interesting point, and I feel like I'm gonna give a personal antidote. It's Keenan's fan to give me a personal antidote. So basically, I'm Nigerian, and my parents, I love them to death, but like excellence is the one word that you're gonna hear all the time. Like, you need to be the head and not the tail. You need to be excellent. And it's like it is encouraging because they're like, you're born with excellence. Look at what I was able to achieve. Look at what your father was able to achieve. Like excellence in your blood. And I feel like it's the way that you frame positive affirmations. Because I feel like it's important not to frame your positive affirmations or to base them off of what you are or what you do, sorry. Because like you're a human before you're a human being. Have you seen that quote that's like you're a human before you're a being? People focus too much on what they do and that being the basis they use to affirm themselves, rather than just like, I'm enough because I'm alive and I'm living. Yeah. I'm enough because I just exist. And that in itself is beautiful. And let me start there in understanding how I'm gonna go and how I'm gonna progress and how I'm gonna tackle these challenges. It's not because somebody in my great granddad was excellent, it's because I'm alive. That's why I'm perfect. Yeah. And just kind of like understanding that like you don't need to do anything to be enough, like you're just enough, finished.
I think on the back of what you're just saying, sorry to jump, sorry, different.
I've been waiting, by the way.
Once you start, you're going to stop it, so I'll give it a go.
That's all right, it is all right.
We need to be careful how we allow people to frame success for us. Success is different for different people. I think we all need to understand that we're all running a race, but we're not in the same race. We're not all running a 100-meter sprint. We're not all doing marathons like Mafaro, and we're not all going to come first. But that don't mean you're not successful. I think for me, I took up cycling during COVID. I used to have a much bigger belly than this part. And for me, I said I'd love to reach a point where I can do 5K by myself and enjoy it. And I reached that space. Then we started doing 25K, and I think the last thing I did, the longest, when I got home, I couldn't even go to the fridge to walk. My kids had to go. I was broken. I did like 87 kilometers on one cycle. So you're building, but that's my achievement. But another person could do that 87 kilometers. It might take them 3 hours. It took me 7. But the fact is, I got there. So we have to frame success for ourselves and be careful that we don't fall under undue pressure, because people are force feeding us this ideology that success only looks like £1 million and a Louis Vuitton handbag. That's not true.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay, just off the back of that, in some sort of way, it's true, like we do need to redefine what success is, but also realizing that if on your way to success you are failing at every hurdle, that narrative can be super powerful for someone else, especially when you then succeed. So one of my things, so I'm coming today as, so I'm welfare role, by the way, hello. So if anyone is triggered by anything, come and find me. We've got a bathroom there. But I'm a doctor. I'm now a part-time student at Cambridge. But 20 years ago, I got into Cambridge to do medicine, and I left quite, within the space of a year, because one of my brothers, very suddenly died. So over the course, 2 decades, guys, 2 decades, over that time, okay, 10 years later, okay, became a doctor. 10 years later, got back to Cambridge. I'm now building my own narrative of success. And whenever I tell people that, it then empowers them to do something. Like, failure isn't the issue, actually. And that's the thing that we also need to maybe redefine. I mean, I don't actually really like to use the term failure. I'll be honest, I don't really believe in it, because it's people's associations with the term that get them stuck. But a couple of things. The question is, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? I wanted to say just 2 quick things, just trying to bring some value, maybe not to everyone, but maybe to some person. So Julia mentioned this thing about running and the analogy, but there's actually, so I don't know much in terms of theory of imposter syndrome, but it sounds like we all have a personal story, that there is something called cognitive restructuring. And what cognitive restructuring is basically, it's about, let's say you're having a problem, any problem at all. So it could be, right, I'm in this Russell Group University, I'm looking around, I don't think I fit in, I don't think I'm going to make my exams. You actually look at the evidence, your evidence in your life. When have there been other times you felt like this in a similar way? And, so, okay, what, for and against, essentially. And it's a really strong body of evidence, but basically it's sort of like what Lee was talking about building muscle memory. It's about actually cognitively thinking, is what I'm thinking true? Is it based on evidence? And the really powerful thing about it is you can make it personal to you. And then as soon as you start to see the fact that the whole concept is actually a facade, then you can move forward. It's not about avoiding it and not acknowledging it. It's about actually dealing with it. So that could be a strategy.
Thank you. I think we're gonna have to head to the next question. Just well, I guess we'll take the last.
Okay, I was just gonna say something really quickly. So I'm from EY as well. My name's Nathan. I work in the talent team at debut. Let me shrink that. I think for me, I don't think I ever really have had imposter syndrome. Quick spotted history of my career. Started off working in schools and colleges, then I worked for 3 charities, and then I went from a charity of 20 people to moving over to EY 3 months ago. EY has about a bajillion people working for them, there's so much going on. I think, people are speaking about positive aspirations and, stuff like that. I think there's definitely scope for that, but I've worked with a lot of young people in my career, and I always say to them, in the apprenticeship space, when you get your apprenticeship, it's really important that you're good at your job. I am very good at my job. I'm very good at what I do. And when I moved to EY, I had nothing to prove to anyone because I know my skills and my abilities. And I think that is a bigger part of not having imposter syndrome or lessening your imposter syndrome. And I say this to all of my apprentices because there's a class element to this as well. It's very important that you know your skills, what you're good at. And everyone's got things that they're good at. Some people are good at, FIFA, some people are good at football, some people are good at drawing. But what other skills have you got? Are you good at? Are you good at person speaking? Are you good at interpersonal skills? Are you very friendly? Are you very good at breaking down information? Know those things and know how to place those strengths. I have been historically, it's only until relatively recently, I've been the youngest person that did my job, whatever job I was in, just because I was just the youngest, not anymore, unfortunately. These guys are anymore. It's not fair. But I was never nervous about that because I always played to the strengths of that. I always brought new ideas, new technologies, new ways of doing things. That's what young people do. That's what all you guys do. I'm now kind of like out of that a little bit, but I'm now out of that. So I think the important thing is know your strengths, play to those strengths, and me moving from a charity to EY, the glass, the big glass building didn't bother me. Like it's a building. I deserve that. I deserve the massive pay rise that I got because I'm very good at my job, because I've done the reading. I do a lot of reading about the education system. I keep up to date. When Clubhouse has been during lockdown, I was attending lots of like education-based rooms as well. I do the reading, so therefore that's why I'm good at my job. So if someone ever said to me, you don't deserve to be here because of X, Y, Z, look me up on LinkedIn. I'm a big deal. Oh. And that's what but that's not arrogance. I'm just very confident in my job. So, and that confidence is built over time and over, records of success. But that record of success has come from hard work. It's not just come from thin air. So my advice to all of you is get to know yourself. Do the positive affirmations. Say to yourself that you're enough, but get to know your strengths. Get to know yourself, and then take that out into the world.
And just adding quickly onto that, your strengths, as you said, it doesn't have to be like a big thing that, oh, I can build a spaceship or something. It could be something as small as I'm a really friendly person who I'm really approachable. Little things like that, little strengths like that you do have, is really honing on them and like making them like your actual valuable skill that you have and the valuable strength that you have and bringing it to the table. So yeah, that was definitely what
I really agree with everything you said, but it's not just about getting to know your skills, it's about accepting them for what they are. Because there's some people who, when we look at the whole term, what is it, ADD, shamanic within, the word we're looking at. Generally, people who suffer with it are high achieving individuals. Who recognize that I've got a first in law from Oxford or Harvard or wherever else it is, but I couldn't believe I got that. So it's about that mental capacity to actually recognize what it is and embrace it. And sometimes it's just hard.
Just one other point on that as well, because I may have sounded like I'm an A-grade student. I'm a solid B. Like I'm an A-grade student. There are things that I'm absolutely rubbish at, and I know those and I own those as well. So I think that's the important thing as well. I can't count to save my life. Don't ask me to add nothing because it's going to be a shambles.
Okay.
But I know I'm aware of those things, but I also know my strengths. So I face my strengths, but I'm aware of my weaknesses. That's all.
Just one super quick thing. Sorry, I've got to. You said something really, really interesting there. You said that if people have something to say, look me up. But the point is, the thing about imposter syndrome is it's not usually other people who are telling you those things, it's yourself.
Yeah.
So I guess the big takeaway from what you said is the more you know your strengths, self-awareness, the better, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes we are rattled by what other people say that adds to our imposter syndrome, and sometimes it's in our heads, but sometimes it can be better. But the more you know yourself and your strengths, I think the less hopefully that someone can rattle you or you'll say to yourself, I don't deserve this because you would be like, yes, I do.
Yeah, definitely. I was really nice to round up the question about imposter syndrome, but we are running out of time, so we do need to move on to the next question, which Princess is going to sort of add some background to. Before we start, the question was, do you believe neurodivergence is represented positively in the Black community? I know we touched on it earlier.
So yeah, I'll start. I think this feeds in a lot to a question that we had earlier on Black Caribbeans being more likely to be excluded from their schools. I find that because there's a lower expectation of behaviour, particularly from Black people and Black minorities, especially in secondary schools, and they're labelled as troublesome. There's like often an overlooking of symptoms of neurodivergence and being like labelled as destructive or so on. And I was talking to, I was talking to today, and I was saying that especially with Black women, the things like dyslexia, dyspraxia, and ADD, maybe it is like a kind of an imposter syndrome in your own classroom and feeling like you have to constantly work up. And what happens is we end up masking. And masking is a big thing with ADHD. Like I found that coming into university, I actually did a test and I was just like, oh, it makes a lot of sense now. Because my masking skills are like.
By the way, masking, if you're not aware, is a term for when neurodivergent people, often subconsciously, even undiagnosed neurodivergent people do it. They sort of cover up and suppress their neurodivergent traits and tendencies in order to appear more neurotypical, which is people who are neurodivergent in society, so that they aren't discriminated against and that they are afforded more privileges that neurotypical people have, that neurodivergent people don't have.
I don't know. I'd say like an example for me of masking was like working 5 times harder than my peers, especially in primary school as well. Like I find that picking up things, I saw it as normal that I wouldn't understand anything that goes on in classes. Like for example, I can't sit through a lecture, but I'd go back and I spend 3 hours on a 1 hour lecture and I feel like this is okay, this is just what I need to do to, you know, get it. I'm just different, but it's very, very, very overlooked within the Black community. Yeah.
As someone who has ADHD and autism, as a Black woman as well, in school, linking it to what you said about Black Caribbean, and being Black and Caribbean, linking it to what you said about exclusions and behaviour. I'm the kind of person who, because of my neurodivergence, I just say, I have no filter, I say it how it is. And teachers didn't understand why I always did that. I always said, if I thought your lesson was rubbish, I'd tell you. But I couldn't really, it's not something I did like consciously. I wouldn't consciously go, I'm going to go and tell the teacher the lesson's rubbish. Sometimes I would just say it, but it would just come out.
It's not understanding the social, especially with autism, it's like not understanding the social rule that you're not supposed to tell people these things.
Yeah.
It's like that you just don't know this.
So I was always like, because of things like that, I was always put in exclusion room. Nobody tried to understand where I was coming from. I was very misunderstood. And for me, it made me feel like I wasn't enough or I was doing something wrong. Even though what I was doing would be wrong had I been neurotypical. But because I was neurodivergent, it was like,
well, it was more that there was support needed instead of like the question is,
instead of just throwing me in the exclusion room, that was never the solution for me. It was someone needed to tell me what I was doing was wrong instead of just putting me and how I could work on it rather than just putting me in the exclusion room and just seeing me as trouble, seeing me as being naughty and not knowing how to behave when I did actually know how to behave. It was just I couldn't really control it, kind of thing.
Well, it's like, well, do you believe neurodivergence is represented positive, but community isn't represented at all? It's like no one assumes you get demonized instead of being considered as someone who may be neurodivergent, may have ADHD, may have autism, may have dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, OCD, Tourette's, all different forms of neurodivergence. Instead of being like instead of that ever being a consideration, it's straight away that you're a bad kid, you're doing something wrong, you're lazy, you can't focus in class, you're not dyslexic, you're good at English, things that I was told. Or you don't have autism, you're just rude. No, you're not considered to have anything that would explain any behaviours that are seen as wrong, which there's a whole other conversation. Is it represented positively? Well, I would say no, it's not even a consideration. And then you.
Okay, I think Junior.
I was going to ask, when you said you spoke to teachers in the filter, and when you did that, was that like with kinda, i.e. did you tell the truth? But did you tell the truth? But was that with, I guess, level of empathy for how it could come across to the teachers, or just like literally whatever words?
Whatever I thought, I said it. But the thing is, I always say what other people are thinking, and because other people don't say it, I'm the one that's demonized for saying it.
No, so it's the idea of it's a neurodivergence as well, with no filter. It's the not, especially with things like autism, ADHD. ADHD is having poor impulse control. It's your brain meant to speak. Your hyperactive brain, you meant to speak. It's not trying to be rude. There's also not knowing. Like I was undiagnosed autistic ADHD and I'm dyslexic, and I was in a class once and everyone in my history where I wanted to know if one of my history teachers was pregnant. And I didn't understand quite why they just wouldn't ask her. You have a question, ask the question. So I put my hand up in the class. I went, it's not a matter, are you pregnant? And she laughed at me and said, no, it's not. Pregnant. But now looking back years later and now knowing that I have autism, I see that it's me not understanding the social rule. Whereas in other classes, if you go, especially ADHD, your lesson is boring. Can I make this more interesting? If you say that, you're considered to be really rude and horrible. It's never, wait, why does someone of your age or general intelligence or whatever not see that that's rude? Like why there's no investigation beyond you're a bad child, you're a bad student. There's no rather than you might need support. You're spending some more time on this than other students doing the work as someone with ADHD. It's never why does this person need to know all the information but they can't get it on the page? Why it's never that, it's they're lazy, they don't want to do the work. And that's and whereas lots of white children are afforded the courtesy and understanding of let's speak to the SEN special educational needs department, let's see what's going on, what this kid has so much potential but they're not doing it, what can we do about it? And black students aren't afforded that, and unfortunately often the older generation of black parents aren't willing to consider those as well.
I was going to say that I think this feeds very well into the theme of the black superheroes at what cost. Because we have this expectation of excellence, especially a lot of us being like the children of like migrants or people who immigrated here, there's this expectation that we should literally just exceed the rooftop in whatever we do.
Yeah.
And there's less of an acceptance of firstly that vulnerability and also difference. And it's like it's almost like this comparison, like you have to constantly be compared to someone else's kids or this or that. And it's like there's not, why isn't it accepted in the black community? Because I think people view neurodivergence almost as a failure. Like it's not nice to say, but it's almost viewed as a parent failure. Like I've produced a child that can't achieve, which is wrong, because like Einstein did not have dyslexia. Like it's possible to do it, but it's just there's a lack of understanding. And so it's like on a more practical run, how do we firstly get more understanding out? Why aren't we being diagnosed earlier on? And it's like, what do we do from now on to increase representation in the black community? Yeah.
I wanted to say two things. So one thing about what Savannah said about why you know all this information but can't get it down on the page. There's no investigation into that. But a personal story, I'm very much a perfectionist, and this is because of my ADHD and autism and how it interacts. And I did my history mock, right? And because I typed, because of my basically a number of reasons why I typed my exam. So I typed it, and what it was I did it, but I didn't think it was very good. So I just deleted it and handed in nothing and got a U. And there was it was just kind of, you need to believe in yourself. But how? I can't physically see that I'm good at something until I've seen results. But even when I see the results, I think this is just a fluke. I'll never be able to do it again, kind of thing. And with what Princess said about you produced a failure kind of thing with your parents. My dad is dyslexic. He will never accept or admit that he is dyslexic. But I feel like that goes into it, like within themselves. They'll never look like, because a lot of neurodivergent conditions are hereditary, and they'll never look back and think, could I possibly be neurodivergent myself? Because they just want to be, they just don't want, they see it as a failure in itself. Well, like never mind producing a child who is neurodivergent.
I actually wanted to add on to what Princess said minutes ago. They mentioned that African parents, they can put pressure on students, on their kids to, like aim high, study, do well. I think, ironically, in a bit of a paradoxical sense, I want to think that the more pressure that a parent puts on their child to study, and do well, I think if they do that, I think it can make studying seem as a chore and something that isn't as enjoyable. Whereas I think if they can back off a bit, and I guess let students pursue their own curiosity, they're going to outperform because they're doing something that they intrinsically like, not to satisfy the pressure that their parents putting on. Yeah.
I have a question before, just if whoever said yes, because there's absolutely yes about neurodivergence being represented positively in the black community. If you're online, if you wouldn't mind typing in something about that, if you're here, if you wouldn't mind sharing in a minute, whilst these two share what they were going to share. I think we've got a different answer to the rest of it, so I'd be really interested. I think we all want to hear what that perspective is there, but I don't know if you guys want to speak first.
I just wanted to say I relate so much to what my full name Jade was saying. Like, honestly, when you said like, okay, so I've done this before, like even having grades, and that's the thing that I think people who don't have imposter syndrome don't get. Like, it's not that I don't know I can't do it. Like I'm where I am because I did what I did. It's the fact that regardless of what I tell myself, you know, just despite what I affirm, every challenge looks like something I can't achieve. And it's like the thing with imposter syndrome for me is like, it's the fear of not understanding why I don't think I can't do it. It's not that I can't tell myself, yeah, I'm great. But the minute I see that paper, I'm like, yeah, okay, never mind. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, despite the fact that people will tell you, but look at where you are, look at what you've achieved. Still, you're just like, no, but I can't do it. And that's the fear that I don't know how to tackle. If that makes sense. And like the things people have said, like affirming yourself, like looking at evidence, I've tried, but it's when you sit down and it's like fight or flight basically. You don't have You're Enough. You don't have the songs you're listening to or the posters on your bedroom. All you have is like fight or flight. And most times I fly, like I just don't do the work.
But do you think that, like, you see how we've looked at it and we've said affirming yourself and so on, so on, so on. Do you think that what you've just said, is that from like your belief system in a way? Like, is it because you hold like intrinsic beliefs about yourself that you're not good enough? Or is it because like where you get your affirmation from is like shaky? Because like, not to critique or anything, but I'm just trying to like completely understand it, because I feel imposter syndrome, but I feel it temporarily, like based on especially what she said as well, the way that your mum like nurtured you as a child. Like, it's not something that you come across like frequently. I'm not trying to like invalidate or anything, I'm just trying to understand. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know. Sorry, I literally don't know.
I relate to what you've just said, honestly, completely. And I think I'm still there. But I think, okay, so I've got a dad who I adore. He's 89, so he'd be right there. He'd have me on the t-shirt, on my sneakers, everything. So that's on one side, but for years, okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of context. So my dad, who's 89, he's got more energy than me, no lie. I try not to use that term. 2 of my brothers have died, like, before their time. So on one hand, I've got a sort of an example that life is long, you've got time. And then I also know, actually, just like that. And obviously, you know, the effects on mental health, losing a sibling so young to issues that you don't understand. That's one of the reasons I'm here and I was so passionate about this conference. But where it comes back to what you're saying, that was me. I was you, fight or flight, every day. That was probably, I'm only just starting to see chunks of light through it. But the point is, you've got to keep on. My great friend, and maybe if we do have a follow-up event, she'll come. She's from Ethiopia. She's probably one of the most intelligent people I know. And she was the first Black female lecturer in philosophy. But basically, she has this saying, just keep turning up to the table. Keep turning up to the table. Not keep turning up, just keep turning up to the table. And then she says, some days I get to the table and nothing comes. I don't write anything. So she's a writer now. Other days I can't stop myself. I forgo sleep. And so it's the same thing. You just have to keep on facing it. And then over time, you will start to notice changes. And the whole thing, so nothing for me is wasted. So now I'm where I am. I look back and I have so much that I can relate to in what you've just said. But I actually see that was my fertile space. that was my soil and my water to get to where I am now. It feels really uncomfortable when you're there, but if you're not there, I'll be honest, success, the future, the way you see the world will go in a totally different trajectory anyway that you might not want. So if I was you, actually, the harder it feels, the more just keep on looking at it. Keep sitting with it. That's all you have to do.
I think I'm conscious of time, so I know you want to.
It's okay. I was literally just going to mention my younger brother who has like.
No, go on. I'm just saying, I think you should be the closing, the wrapping up.
I belong. But yeah, so in terms of like neurodivergence, there are loads of people around me who have like autism, and suffer from like mental health issues, like mostly men. That's why I'm really passionate about mental health, specifically for like black males. So my brother, he's 14, and he has speech and language problems, like mild autism basically. But he suffered like a lot when it comes to like the schooling system and stuff. But I didn't write yet. But one thing that I will commend my mum for is her commitment to understanding. So my mum is Jamaican, but I know that on my like Nigerian side, my dad's from Nigeria, they are not very accepting of severely autistic children, and they think that they have demons inside of them or stuff like this. And it's like to be able to see someone like my mum have a commitment to fully understanding her child and contending for her child in the education system, that has been like a really good representation of what of how beneficial parenting can be. And in terms of what Kenna even just said, like for like children facing or just people facing the situation, my heart aches sometimes for the amount of situations that my little brother has been put in and has had to like face and learn from. And I think that's just a testimony to how much you can grow, and also the reality of the fact that you do have to face certain situations in order to be able to learn sometimes. Even though you can teach someone something, you can speak to someone about something, you can try and equip them with the tools, sometimes life does have to teach you those lessons, and it's really unfortunate. But in the end, you do see results. And I think, was it Savannah who mentioned SEN, the SEN department? Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started. The amount of patronizing attitudes that are within that structure, it's really disappointing to see. But I think that one of the tools that we can really hold on to and really try to like sharpen is parental understanding, because I feel like often we do try to place responsibility outside of the home and into institutions, and it's always these institutions that fail us sometimes. Not saying that there aren't some good ones, but I think really focusing on changing attitudes and perspectives within the home, within our parents, that is where we'll start to see real change, because our parents are our greatest defenders sometimes. Not everyone has the luxury of having parents, but where there are parents, I feel like we really do have to commit to really equipping them with the knowledge and the tools to support their child as effectively as possible.
And becoming the parents and about the generations of friends, the uncles, aunties in the future that are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I said yeah, simply because like I feel like on social media and stuff, there's more like awareness of like neurodivergent like people and like needs, but like I also like take into consideration like what everyone else is saying and like understand that there's also different lenses.
Yeah, I would find that I see what you mean. It's really great that we're, especially I would say within recent years, the acknowledgement of neurodivergence and as a thing that is prevalent amongst lots of people. But I think unfortunately even that acknowledgement and hesitation is still very white centered. I don't think it's quite low, including people of colour and notably black people in our experiences of neurodivergence in a way that is equal to how it represents the sort of white communities. But it does, and even there there's still so much work to do, but we're still lagging behind in that work. And so as much as I think we're having more awareness around neurodivergence and even within the Black community. So there are positive aspects of it, and definitely in that way, in my opinion. But also, I'm not sure if I would personally say it's quite positively represented as a whole. But I think we're getting there though, so it's definitely like work in progress and steps being made. I'm gonna say that we need to wrap up like now, because we will like have so much to say that we'll be talking for ages, and we want to leave space for the expert panel that's to come from Cambridge. So thank you guys for listening to us, engaging with us online, and also in person to panel members.
Which I'm jumping right now. You're gonna have a break?
Yeah.
I wasn't ready.
I was like, you know, from using words, I was like, yeah. Honestly, I wanted to much and everyone's saying so. Everyone's saying so. I'm just like, bro. Honestly, having and having to like just say that what excuse do I have this week? Like sometimes I'm like, I'm myself this week. So I have to
I will start my essay 3-4 weeks and I'll never write it. Quite like keep writing my essay. Must be nice, I know, must be nice. And then I will start, and then sometimes I'll write one day, and then I'll go back the next day, and I'll write nothing. And then I'll go back in 3 days' time, and then I'll write again. But I'll write down my list and I'll finish.
Because I don't have a need to but there's a week. And then there's like, in the weekend, we just have 3 days. You know what? I own like 2 times. Like she, but I have one week, you have a green week, I have one week. She's made it very tough. Actually, she was sweet. She was like, yeah, she didn't do anything. It depends. Some kids, and then they will take it. So my friend's kid did that during lockdown. I haven't received it. Like, told them to police people like, thank you. I'm supposed to actually start do you know, you realize how similar
Two masses for men. Have you seen
It's very old. It's on the back. You know when
If you want, you can get people warmed up. You can get people warmed up into the topic.
It's not what you think, but I'm telling you.
Right, guys, next up is about to begin. We can take towards our seats. That's all good. Gracias. How do I say thank you? Merci. All right. I am so sorry about the delay, but next we've got a session from not one but two representatives from the University of Cambridge ACS and Dr. Omar, ready to give an expert input. Thank you.
Hi guys. So I'll let you introduce yourself. So Fathead. No, I'm joking. Sorry.
Okay, so my name is Yinka, and just as of earlier, I'm the Senior Welfare Officer for the ACS in Cambridge, and this is
Sakina. Egghead. I'm Sakina, and yeah, go to Cambridge, and I'm like I'm a junior external welfare officer, so working on things that may not take place in Cambridge, still working on things that happen there, but things like this and dedicating attention towards that. So yeah, today we're kind of having a professional panel, which is speaking with people who are further on in their careers, their journeys, and what they found in mental health, and just hearing their experiences and a bit about them. So yeah, it's gonna be really exciting. So yeah.
Okay, so firstly, we're going to invite Dr. Atimor up. So Dr. Atimor is a medical doctor and she specialises in obstetrics. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's it.
And gynecology. And yeah, so she is a championer of mental health, and that's why she's going to come up here and just lead us through like a true and false session, and just give you some insight about some misconceptions perhaps and some interesting facts. And yeah, so, and there's chocolates available, as Kenny has pressured me to say 7 times. If you do get the questions correct, you will get chocolates.
It's very important that you get very engaged, otherwise there are no chocolates on.
And they're M&S chocolates.
Wow, that's fancy.
Yes.
Well, what you question or like all of this year?
Well,
I
if you get all 3, then we'll give these away. You can go home with a Belgian truffle. Can we get a woo from the audience, please? Lovely. So yeah, sorry.
well worked.
You may come up. Can we give her a Yay! Thank you so much.
He's my best friend, guys. Everything just nods and smiles.
So what I'll do is we'll go through the questions first, and then you guys can think of your answer, and then I'll just elaborate a little bit on it as well.
So if you guys log on to Menti, engage with him.
So everyone log on.
Oh, wow. This is interesting.
So up to 1 in 5 women will experience a mental health problem in pregnancy. And that includes things like anxiety, depression, sometimes low mood. And this is in pregnancy. And when we think of pregnancy as well, we think of the year afterwards, because that's seen as a postnatal period as well.
So when you talk about like mental health in pregnancy, is it like identified as like a separate mental health problem, or is it like seen within the context of like in pregnancy? Is that a symptom?
So you can actually you can come into it with mental health, so can be schizophrenic and get pregnant, or you can develop a mental health problem in pregnancy, such as anxiety, depression, low mood. And we know postnatal depression comes into that as well, which is the postnatal period afterwards, which can get really bad. You can get postnatal psychosis, which is the really bad version of postnatal depression.
I would have thought it's higher than 1 in 5.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's what's up to, so that's what you can see.
Right, so I'm going to change my
But
yes to no.
No collaborating in the room.
You can talk, you can discuss between yourselves.
We'll give like another 15 seconds. Unless anyone still needs time.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
So the answer to that is, we're giving the answers now or afterwards?
Whatever you want.
Up to you.
Okay, so that's actually right. Up to 1 in 5 women will experience mental health in pregnancy.
Whoever said no, I don't want to see any hands up for the Belgian truffle. Put it down, put it down, real down.
Up to 1 in 5 women. But putting that into context, it's actually the 4th leading cause of maternal death in the UK. So we have like an audit system in the UK called Embrace, which is specifically for maternity services, which looks at maternal deaths, all causes, whether they be direct or indirect, cardiac disease, anaphylaxis, anything, and they categorize it, and it's actually the 4th leading cause of maternal death in the UK.
That's where I was going. That's where I was going.
So the next question now, are we?
Yeah, was
I think everyone answered the previous one or something. Did they?
So this is the next one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is this the next?
So this is the third question. So they went through the second question, which was, this number of 1 in 5 is likely to be higher among
Okay.
ethnic minorities, true or false?
Did everybody sort of get the second one? Okay, fine. I thought it was only me that missed it. Fine.
And then the third one, white women are more likely to be offered treatment than black or Asian women.
Are people still submitting or?
Yeah, it keeps going up.
I heard there was pizza coming.
Craven. Sarah, sorry, back to you.
Yeah. So that's all 3 questions. Everyone's answered. So in terms of, are there like answers coming up on the next slide? Was it just?
No.
Okay. So in terms of,
so the second one.
so in terms of, so in terms of the second one, which was, is that number likely to be higher in women of ethnic minorities? Yes, it is. So there are more. In the UK, unfortunately, what's happened here is that the maternity services have had a lot of research into how ethnic minorities are treated differently. And putting that into context, I don't know if you know, about 2 years ago, there was a lot of stuff in the papers, and it's still the case now, where it was seen that black and ethnic minorities, black women in particular, are 5 times more likely, this year it's come out as 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy than their white counterparts. Complex number of reasons for that, but for that to be something that came out 2 years ago, this is obviously something that's gone on for a long time. But there was the MPRACE report came out, putting it more into context, looking into it, researching into it as the reasons for this. And there are complex reasons, from cultural and actually, accessing services, people coming to services, and people being recognised as needing and helping services, to when you're on labour ward or delivering, how you might be treated differently. Remember, a lot of people might have language barriers, cultural barriers. And so that's something which is still a problem today. That's identified again in COVID. Black women are 4 times more likely to die with COVID symptoms in maternity services than their white counterparts, than their Asian or Chinese counterparts. And so this is something which we are looking into. And so in terms of mental health, once again, a lot more research needs to be done to it. We know that they are more likely to suffer from mental health conditions and less likely to access services, less likely to be seen as needing services, and less likely to actually be offered services, which was the last one, because it's not recognised that they are in need, whether that be some kind of cultural problems, i.e. the person on the other side of the table isn't recognising or answering the correct questions in somebody in a situation who is in need of help. This impacts on the whole maternity care, from conception to delivery and postnatal care. So in terms of mental health, in the postnatal period, suicide is the 2nd commonest cause within a year of death in the postnatal period, the 2nd commonest cause. And women who are suffering from postnatal depression or postnatal psychosis, they do take their lives in pretty horrific ways. But for it to be the 2nd commonest cause is quite telling. It's really troubling. And if you think that our communities are more likely to have those women suffering from that, they're going to have higher numbers. That's something that a lot needs to be done for at the moment.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. You mentioned the language barriers, maybe some cultural problems and stuff like that. Are there any other factors? Because
there are tons of factors. So if you think about, so in terms of when I say cultural factors, that can range from women of ethnic minorities maybe not feeling that somebody who might be their white midwife or white doctor on the other side of the table understands what they need in terms of their care, and not actually accessing that. That also involves people not answering questions of them. Because often you can see somebody who might be in need or needs something extra. If you're not answering the right questions, And you know, we're told to ask questions about domestic violence. That's an obvious one. But it's really difficult to ask those questions on the other side of the table. If you see a woman who you feel is not supported and might need extra help, sometimes it's very difficult to answer that question. And somebody from an ethnic minority might feel that actually there's nothing you can do for me. And so they might be less likely, but often you can see when somebody isn't necessarily supported. And so, I mean, there are a number of factors that come into play, and it is unpicking and unraveling them. Offering somebody a mental health service or extra support it's not really that hard. It's just knowing who to offer it to, you know?
And also, aren't people from ethnic minority backgrounds, in particular black women, less likely to say yes to being offered mental health? Yes, if they are offered.
Exactly, they're less likely to, because they don't feel they need it. That's the other thing. If you don't feel you need it, if somebody says, I want to help you, and you're actually, I'm fine, you know, where can you go from there? But sometimes it's the persistence of it. This is it. You have like midwives who see women postnatally, and then you've got health visitors who come in after that. It's about the persistency of it. And I think sometimes with ethnic minorities, it's not pushed as much as it maybe it could be. And it can be difficult. It can be difficult.
I was wondering if this is like from the perspective you're speaking from, is that more public healthcare or is that across private healthcare as well? Or do you think it has to be towards black women in maternal services?
Say that again, is it more, sorry,
Is it more from a public healthcare that would be rather than private as well? Like, is there a difference between the two?
So private healthcare, in terms of maternity services, I don't deal anything to do with private healthcare at all. Yeah, so it is definitely where you get women who come in for point of care in the NHS, walk into the labour ward, antenatal care generally. So in terms of private healthcare, I'm sure it'd be very different, but we don't see a lot of private healthcare in this country at all. Yeah, and I must say the NHS maternity services in this country are amazing. It is amazing. It's just we can do more. You know, that's all it is. We can do more, but it is one of the best services in the world. You can come off a plane from any part of the country, 36 weeks pregnant, and have a cesarean section free of charge. You know, and have full postnatal care. They'll even throw in a scan if they've got time beforehand to make sure everything's okay with you, to make sure they've got history. It's an amazing service, but it can do more, and it is failing our community.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's like an effort being made to diversify like the mental health services that the NHS offers, because I know that for a lot of people I know in their experiences of if they're actually that small group of people that actually agree into going into mental health services, they can feel like they're not being heard because there's certain experiences that we have as black women growing up in the UK that me speaking to a white therapist, she can attempt to understand, but the shoes that the place that I've been in is going to be difficult for her to particularly wrap her head around. So are there like efforts being made by like the NHS and the government to diversify like the treatments that they offer for?
I would like to say yes, and I feel there probably are, but it's difficult. You know, it's who goes into the service, isn't it? So yeah, they try to get more doctors, try to get more midwives from a diverse background and community, but it is difficult. And then is mental health sexy? No, it really isn't. So it's a very special group of people who actually will specialize in mental health, and hopefully they will have the love of it enough to actually really offer something amazing to that service. And people like me who kind of deal with everything, including mental health, it's about keeping ourselves aware of how to appropriately refer and correctly refer and notice that and ask the questions, and everyone can ask the questions.
It's going to be our last question because we still have got
Sorry,
to our next amazing guest, which is Lee. So yeah.
There's a point I wanted to make. So as someone who was racially abused on campus by security guards at Royal Holloway, they offered me counselling, and there was two main counsellors. One was a black man and one was an Asian woman. But for me as a black woman, I wouldn't want to speak to a black man. And I also wouldn't feel like an Asian woman would understand where I was coming from. So it was like, for me, I'd like to have spoken to a black woman. So I just dismissed the experience. I didn't speak to anyone. I just dismissed the suggestion completely.
I mean, it's a shame you didn't feel that you had the right person, but somebody who you felt you could talk to. The one thing I'd say about counselling, any type of counselling. I've gone through counselling, suffered from depression in the past, had multiple sessions of counselling, is that sometimes it's the least likely person who you feel will be the person who will actually be able to get through to you and help you in the way you need to be helped or want to be helped. Sometimes you have to go through a lot of counsellors to get to the right one. You know, like anything, one size does not fit all, you know, and it is about sometimes that one's not working for me, I'm going to try a different counsellor. That one's not working for me. I've been through a number of counsellors, you know, and I don't know if any of them were ever perfect, but some of them were perfect for that time. Yeah. The one other thing I wanted to say is that everybody in this room is either likely to be pregnant at one point, women, know somebody who's pregnant at one point, whether that be your sister, your partner, your wife. And so it's really important that we support them, because a lot of the time, one of the things that they find is that they don't feel supported. They don't feel they can talk to anybody. And that's with mental health in general. Reaching out and talking to somebody is really difficult. Pregnant women feel they should be able to cope. They feel that this is so natural. Why am I not coping with it? And so it's really important as people in this community to support anyone you know who might be in that situation, probably in the future for you guys. But if you know anyone now, that's even more important. Teen suicide is crazy high, increased, you know, in pregnancies. And so it's just really important that you are aware of being supportive of people around you who you know might be pregnant. That's it.
Thank you so much.
Should we do the chocolates after Lee?
Yeah. So next, it's a really big privilege to introduce Lee. He's commented so far in our discussions, but Lee is a London-based community engagement practitioner and he's a convener. He does a whole wide range of things just throughout his community to help mental health. So it's a really, really big privilege to have you here, Lee, and thank you for even just sitting with us this whole time. So yeah, can we give a round of applause as he comes up, please?
Take it home, Lee.
And that's Cambridge. So yeah, Lee's kind of spoken throughout, but it would be really great if we could just like have an introduction about like who you are, what you do, kind of just your kind of start into this sector and what kind of triggered you to get into this. So yeah.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's such a privilege to be here. I think the two most important things about me are that I'm a happily married man to one woman, and I'm a father of two absolutely gorgeous and delightful daughters, 5 and 2, going on 27, and I'm bossing me around, but I'm really glad that they have huge appetites and great personalities. As it relates to what I do, so I work for a large charity that supports people who are facing a life-threatening disease or illness. And outside of that, my community work is just something that's kind of entrenched into my life. I've always been involved in community engagement and working with people at the grassroots level from when I was living in Jamaica to coming back to the UK. And it's just part of me, it's who I am. I live my life almost out of a diary. I'm going to one meeting to the next or one support group or whatever else it may be. And some of the things I'm involved in includes Men Cry Too, which is a bereavement group, particularly for Black men who are going through the process of losing a loved one or losing something. Because we've had men in the group who have said that, you know what, they're going for a breakup and that person being removed from their life and extracted is like a bereavement. And we just talk freely once a fortnight on a Sunday about what we're experiencing, what we're going through, how we deal with that process. And it's just so interesting the way the stories come up, but the fact that we've got a safe space where men are joining from Nigeria, Dubai, the Caribbean, and all across the UK. What's really great about that project is that it's funded by Big Lottery, or it was. I'm now volunteering to do it, but we also had some counselling spaces that we were able to provide for men who wanted to attend. And we all know about the challenges of men of colour accessing counselling and wanting to speak to someone that looks like them, that they can relate to, who understands their language, or the fact that they might gesticulate a bit more or talk loud at certain points and it's not aggression and can just get it. And it's just been a marvellous experience to see men actually coming forward and speaking freely, breaking down in tears and just letting go of what they need to let go of, because we know the drama that comes with death in our community. But also laughing and celebrating in the midst of that. The other thing that I do is the Fathers Forum, which is a space. It started off as for men of color, but we've diversified and it's open to all, because we recognize that all men struggle to some extent with expressing themselves and talking freely. And when it comes to your kids, it's supercharged with emotions. So that space is just created where we go out once a month to go bowling, or we sit in a forum like this and talk, and we bring in expert speakers to come in and share certain things like how to access your children, or the importance of extracurricular activities, or whatever the topic might be, mortgages, how to build your credit rating, and the rest goes on. And then there's loads of other things, but one of the things I do is I run a photography group called Lenses of Croydon. It has about 700 members across the world now at this time. And what we do is we bring in photographers of all different skills and experiences. So we had two young people from the Brit School come and share in the virtual space. They're working like, are we qualified to be here? Because you just had last week a guy with like 100,000 followers on Instagram who does shoots with $100,000 sets. But it's important that people from all spheres and all levels get to share, because you don't know who you're going to reach out to. And I don't think many people recognize that Lenses of Croydon is not just about an arts-based practice where people get to share and be motivated. It's all about mental health. And I've found that for my community, I've had to change my language. So as of this morning, I don't use mental health anymore. I now talk about mental wealth. Because when we talk about mental health, people start putting that stigmatization towards it and want to distance themselves. But when we talk about wealth, you know my community, man, we love money. So I'm all about mental wealth, and I want to know that we're as wealthy as we possibly can be, or at least we have that balance, and where our wealth in our mental state is at a place where we can get through and do the things that we need to do.
Amazing. I guess kind of just taking on what you said earlier in terms of your experience of like your relationship with your father and how he used to encourage you. I'm just really intrigued to see where the shift was from experiencing something so negative to being able to be such a positive influence, and what it was that really kind of changed your perspective and allowed you to now be who you are, really. So if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, so my dad is my hero. Despite the negativity, I recognize the struggles that he's been through. He was here in the Windrush. He was attacked in the pub and arrested because they accused him of trying to dip his fingers into the till when there's nothing like that. My father was a successful entrepreneur who ran his business and ran it legally and did what he needed to do to provide for his kids. But he just had a weird way of trying to motivate and encourage me, and did a lot of damage that's still affecting me to this day. But I think sometimes in relationships, we can hurt people without even realizing it. And no matter how we want the best for them, we tend to overlook the means and the methodology that we utilize to try and bring about that positivity that we wanted to. And as a result of that, I would define myself as damaged goods. And academics has always been a struggle for me, but I've been blessed in my life in that we talk about neurodivergence and people are sharing their experiences and going through it and the diagnosis and where you are in your journey. But every single one of us that has a neurodivergence also has a superpower. And what I was blessed with is that I had some wonderful people placed in my life at certain times. And if you believe in a supreme being, you'll acknowledge that thing as being something that's been ordained, orchestrated, that you had no control over it, but it just happened. Praise God. but the reality is that, you know, we live in a space where things will happen when they're meant to. And I've been blessed. I've had some excellent mentors who have helped me to see value and to see worth where I saw failure, where I saw incompetence, where I saw stupidity. And my journey has been one of such where I've just been growing ever since. I heard someone sitting here, I don't remember who it was talking, I do remember, I was just speaking to there a while ago. She said that when it comes onto the academics, sometimes it's flight or fright. And for me, I remember being at uni, I think about 3 years ago, I went back and was doing the last leg of my photography degree. And I remember getting the extra time because of my neurodivergence and being able to give the assignments in, I think it's like a week later. But I didn't get that till last year because I didn't want to apply for it. I didn't want no excuses, like using the ADHD as an excuse. I didn't want to get the diagnosis for dyslexia and dyspraxia, but I got that in the end last year as well. And the only thing that got me to go through and actually submit the papers, it wasn't because I was doing the positive affirmations or because I believed in myself or anything like that. Do you know what it was? I had a daughter and I needed her to see that degree paper at my house. I needed her to know that it doesn't matter how hard something is, you just got to keep trying. And that's the thing that I say to her every morning, you know, I don't care if you fail. it doesn't matter to me. What I care about is that you try, because Townsend's try, we don't give up, we don't quit. And that's what I try to feed her. And every morning at the school gate, I say to her, she says positive affirmations, and from she was 4, she's been saying the same thing. I exude confidence, I lead by example, and I always try my best. And then we fist bump, and we hug, and then she goes in. And I kind of use what I do with her to build her confidence and let her know who she is and what she can accomplish, and the fact that I don't care whether you're academic or you're not. All I care about is that you're happy. And I just, when I'm driving back home now to go to work, I'm having to replay that stuff in my own mind. I know I'm a leader. Wherever I go, people are going to listen to me. If I was a pastor, I'd have a full church. But it's about me recognizing in myself that I just have to try my best. And that's how I got through uni, just by trying my best. Don't get me wrong, I submitted some of those, and I was always in the uni late, dropping the thing in the box after the deadline, because you know that they're not checking it till in the morning. And I would literally be going down in my box, failed again. And even though I got the extension, I'd always submit it a day late anyway, so I'm still losing 10%. But I'm glad to know that I got, despite all those 10% that I lost, I got the 2-1. So it kind of tells me that if I didn't have the, what's that thing called? That same word I was struggling with earlier. Imposter syndrome. I could have submitted the assignments on time and got the first. But we've gone through, and I give thanks for that. And I just would like, not just my children, but everyone to recognize that, you know, all we can do is our best. We're all going to have challenges. We're all going to have weaknesses. We're all going to have shortcomings. We're all going to have obstacles. But it's just about showing up at the table again, as Ikenna said. Just showing up at the table again and being there and just doing the part you can. I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. You did. I was just going to say, I know that there's time constraints. So I guess one last question, even just from a personal standpoint, but on behalf of everyone, is obviously we're doing this here and we're having a lot of great conversation, but as somebody who, you know, like you're doing a great range of things to help with mental health in our community, what would you say people like us, people of our ages, our experiences can do to effectively improve things, like if you had to just advise us or encourage us?
So there's a couple of things that came to my mind when I was listening to you all speaking today and sharing, and you know, one of the things I feel, and I need to say this before I answer the question, in this room is I sense excellence. I sense people in here with great minds. I listen to how you articulate yourself, the points that you raise, the intricacies that the details that you're paying attention to and that you're raising. It just shows me how bright the future is for ACS and African and Caribbean students across the length and breadth of the country who are engaged in tertiary level education. And, you know, give yourselves a round of applause. It's nice to be around brilliant minds, but also brilliant minds that reflect humility. And I wasn't really expecting that, to be honest. I kind of had my own fixation or thoughts as to what you'd be like in this space. But do you know what? We've just got to keep it real. That's just the key. Just keep it simple. And that's why I've shifted from mental health to mental wealth. Just keep it simple. Just be there. There are some people talking about today around neurodivergence and how we feel and the fact that we can't go through. And I find for myself, by speaking openly about what I'm going through, it makes it easier for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but I think it makes it easier for me. And I think that one of the things that you could do as an organization nationally is you could create posters with persons from within your organization or from within our community who are studying, who have a neurodivergence or who have had some sort of mental health challenge. And if you're open to speaking about it, having your picture taken in a certain way, whether it's behind a black piece of paper or green or whatever it is, but just that it's uniformed, and just stating, my name's such and such, I'm studying at this school, I'm this age, and I have, and just putting it out there in a campaign. And that's going to help to change that narrative where people are feeling afraid, are feeling ashamed, or if you're able to go a bit further than that and do a 2-minute video where you explain the stigma that was attached to it and how you found support and why you feel strong enough, what's your motivation to speak about it now? Because that's what's going to change it for the next generation. We spent a lot of time talking about what we'd like our parents to be doing to change and break that trauma being passed down to our children coming forward. But we've got a responsibility, just like we're putting one on them, and we've got to do that. And that's one of the reasons why I try to speak about the first thing I do anywhere I go. Bear with me, I'm dyslexic, dyspraxic, and I've got ADD. I'm fully loaded, and that's how I start my conversations, because I used to work for a charity where I was leading on mental health projects in the borough of Croydon for BME communities, and I went to a college to lead a session on mindfulness and speaking about neurodivergence. And some parents came up to me, they were all carers, and said, you know what, I'm so glad that I've met a man like you, because my child's just been diagnosed with ADD, and you've just made me feel for the first time that there's hope. And I thought, wow, can you imagine if I didn't say anything, that poor child, what they would have went through. So we've got a responsibility to change that narrative and push back, but also just keep it simple. So I run a group called Jog and Jam, and all the group simply is a running group. Once around the park, Ashburton Park in Croydon, is 1 kilometre. I don't know if I can still do 1 kilometre, but I was up to about 5 recently. And what we do is we run as fast as the weakest link. So if somebody can't make it all the way around, we stop and walk, but we talk and whatever, and we get round. And then when we finish, we check in. We provide everyone with a banana, some water. How's your week? How's your family? What's going on? High five for that. That's big. Celebrate. And if anyone shares a problem that they've got, we'd look at where we can signpost them and how we can support the person through it. There was one young man who started attending. His friend was killed over a Gucci bag, and he wanted to kill the person that had, who he thought had done it, and he had different theories as to who it was and who it wasn't, and was just going through a rough time. And he started coming to Jog and Jam with us, only to find out that's what he, according to him, his words, is what saved his life, because he would have went down the wrong road. He then started coming to Men Cry Too, and he's now in therapy with one of the counsellors assigned to the project, because of he tried to access other local services and just put on waiting lists. And one of the things that I know about our people, we don't like to talk about our private business. You keep your private business at home, and you protect, I guess, the sanctity of what's going on in your household. So we don't share what we're going through. It's not the norm for us. But when we are ready to share, we need it to be instant. So when we hear talking therapies and all these places that the NHS provides saying that there's no waiting list, and then you say, okay, we're ready to share, and you contact them and they tell you, 6 months. That just kills it for you. And that's one of the reasons why so many of us are ending up sectioned, because the intervention that we get is at the point of crisis. So when I say keep it simple, it's about create your little exercise group on campus where you go out for a walk together and find that time to just celebrate and speak it generally. So you don't make it a big thing. You don't use mental health or mental wealth in it at all. It's a walking group. Whether it's a cycling group, it's a cooking group, it's a cards night, whatever it is, those little things make a world of a difference, because of what a lot of people are going through is feelings of isolation, not feeling connected. I heard one of the young ladies in there speaking this evening. She said that when she went onto her university campus, she didn't even think that she would gel with the ACS, because there ain't really no one like that in there like her, because most of the people are predominantly from one particular part of the world. And she's from another part, and she wasn't sure how she'd fit in and what the expectations are going to be and how that's going to work for her. She could easily have been on her own and felt isolated as anything and be going through all of her struggles by herself. Thank God she did have the boldness or the inquiring mind to step out and find this group and has some sort of connection. And I hope that bodes well for her. But the reality is, we have to be our brother's keeper or sisters. And it's just in simplicity. It's just by showing that you care, man. Just by being there. It's about being real. And there's something that I've learned very recently. 45, can't remember what day it was, on Friday, I was 45. Oh. And one of the things I've learned is that relationships are a two-way street. And you cannot have a meaningful relationship with anyone where you're always giving. And then when they attempt to give something back, you don't want to take it, because there's no equity in that. So I'm not saying that you need to point out your business to anyone, but what I am trying to say is that as well as you're giving and trying to take care of others, because we're keeping it simple, mental wealth, you also need to take care of yourself and allow people sometimes to assist you in that process. And that assistance could be in the form of just walking with you. It could be in the form of someone just checking in and saying, look, I know things are kind of tight and you ain't been on for a bit, because we're all feeling it here. But I've got some extra groceries and stuff if you need anything, and actually taking it, because that's a part of the sharing and the giving. And trust me, there ain't nothing that messes with your mental health like hunger. So it's those simple things. So I just say keep it simple, healthy body, healthy mind. So, you know, I believe that we're trichotomic beings, body, soul, and spirit. So whatever you need to take care of your body, whether it be food, exercise, water, laughter, beautiful medicine, sleep. You know, sleep deprivation will kill you and it will mess up mess you up mentally, but also and make you gain weight, or lose it drastically. It just depends. And your soul and your spirit, whether you need to do a little bit of yoga, some mindfulness to take care of that side of you, go for it. I used to think that mindfulness was a load of nonsense, but right now I'm a practicer. I'm my 2-year-old. Oh my God! Sometimes she'll zone you out and she'll just go. It's time she knows she's in trouble, you know. But anyway, let's not go there. And then your spirit. If you're religiously inclined, if you believe in some sort of supreme being, whatever shape that takes for you. Because to me, I don't care who you call God or what you enjoy praying to or for. What I care about is that you're at a place that allows you to have that life balance where you can go forward and conquer, where you can self-actualize and you can progress, you can succeed, you can give off a beautiful aura that people want to be around you. Because if you think there's any glory in walking around with your face screwed up like you're on Frontline, if they still have that in this country, I don't even know, but you're part of some gang protecting a postcode. If you think there's any glory in that, you're a lost soul. Yeah, we need to be in a place where we can smile, be warm, be bright, and be loved, because every single human being is desired of some form of love, whether it's platonic or eros type love that is erotic. You know that stuff. so my encouragement, my encouragement to you is to just keep it simple, keep it real, and allow yourself to be in a place of positivity as much as you can.
Great. Got up the men to just ask questions. Very aware that we have to close up like now, but if you could give an answer to the question on the board, that would be fantastic. Oh, sorry. What do you think about Black people and sectioning? Why do you think a disproportionate amount of Black people get sectioned, and what can we do in preventing these things from happening?
Well, first off, we know that a Black person has 1 in 6 Black people will be sectioned in this country. I think last year 58,000 people were, what's the word now? Were I can't find the word.
Yeah.
It's a very simple word, sorry. So 58,000 people were, I don't want to use the word captured because that's not the right word, but were taken into custody. And then from that point, they're going to determine whether they should be sectioned or not. And when you're hearing 1 in 6 Black people being sectioned, you know that it's concerning, it's alarming. Sectioned is under the Mental Health Act. A person's rights can be taken away from them. So they're placed in a place of a secured unit under the Mental Health Act, where they can't go out, they can't move, they can't do whatever. They're supported by somebody who's a mental health practitioner. They might be given medications, so that could be in the form of an injection, it could be pills, but they have no choice in the matter. They almost become the property of the state, so to speak.
So essentially, you might go to an NHS near you if you're having a heart attack. If it's a mental health problem and you'll see that you're at risk to yourself or to others, there'll be a mental health institution.
And for me, we spoke about earlier about the interventions as being so late for us. One, because we're often in denial. So where I live in Croydon, the highest number of people that are diagnosed with psychosis are from within the Black community, but they will never access the services at the earlier level. And as a result of that, it's when, and sometimes the barriers with that is that family members don't want them to have counseling or to seek that therapeutic intervention because of the stigma on their families. Similar for Asian communities as well, is the shame and the embarrassment. We just don't want that attached to us. But then when it becomes insurmountable and undeniable, and you're seeing members of your family or your son or your daughter hiding in the wardrobe or trying to self-harm themselves because the voices told them to, that's at the point where things get uncontrollable and they're forced to call the authorities, and then they get taken in. So I'm really concerned about it, 100%. And I feel like it's similar to what we've been discussing before, the early interventions, the talking freely. And I think something that's important to highlight, I spoke about psychosis, and a lot of us hear voices, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's when it reaches that point where the voices are preventing you from going about your daily life in a normal way. That's when it becomes an issue. But I'm just saddened by the fact that the way sectioning takes place, because some of it is due to unconscious bias, some of it is due to racism, because they call it ace a ace. You know, people don't take the time out to understand or to recognize that we're gonna respond differently. There's an amazing play that's going around at the moment by Tony Seeley. Especially Google him and I try and tell you the name of the play, but it's looking at Black men's experience of the mental health system and how we actually identify and recognize our difficulties that we face and our challenges. And I'm just thinking of a case in point with someone I know who was sectioned, and when the authorities came to the house, there was a lot of misinformation. As a Black male who, and I was thinking about it today on the way up on the bus as well, if I was told that there's a possibility of me needing to be sectioned, the first thing I would do is get my back up. I'd start saying, no way, there's no way. My voice would raise, I'd be concerned, because I know once they go in there and I start receiving certain medication, I'm probably gonna gain weight, I'm probably gonna get a bit lethargic, because these are the symptoms that you see or the way your body responds, the side effects to these drugs and these medications. And then if I'm being misinterpreted by the physician or whoever it is that's dealing with me, chances are I'm gonna be in there longer than I need to be. So there's been so many people that have been in that situation, and one has to beg the question, did they need to be there? Should they have been there?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the play by Tony Seeley. I don't think you gave that exactly, but yeah. Anyways, I think another play that I've seen, I think a month ago. It's a play called Four Black Boys Who Considered Suicide When the Hue Gets Too Heavy. I think it's written by Brian Kelly Cameron. I actually had a chance to speak to him the other day. Yeah, it's about a group of Black people who usually come together for therapy, and they unload everything and anything about their childhood trauma, upbringing, and anything you think is relatable is there. There's even like road slang, road dialects. They talk about their culture. It's a masterpiece. I think it's come back in 2022. But yeah, the play's called For Black Boys Who Considered Suicide When the Hue Gets Too Heavy. I guess just keep that in your heads when it comes back in 2022, because it's a piece of art. Yeah.
You're on our email sort of list as one of the organisers, right? Will you let everyone know, like almost as a post conference thing, signposting? Yeah.
I'll find a way to.
That would be great.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't remember names, but with Tony Seeley's play, it's one of those plays where the audience gets involved as well. And one of the things I know he'd be open to for sure, and the cast, is actually bringing it to your campuses. So that's something that you could consider as well. Just reach out to him on social media or whatever it is, or if you want a direct link, touch base with me and I can give you a phone number and an email.
Yeah, that's brilliant. But no, thank you so much, Lee, just for even taking the time to speak to us, answering these questions. It's been really great. So yeah, that's really the end. So if we could just all give Lee a round of applause.
Is that off now?
What's that? No, it's still on.
It's still on.
Yeah. And with that brings us to a close. I feel like we've had it all. We spoke about neurodiversity, childhood trauma, parenting, cultures. Spoke about a whole bunch of things. I even had the chance to talk to Savannah, to talk to Savannah about some of my experiences in the past regarding like my darkest moments. And that was really powerful in itself. But to everyone who, of course, here today in person and you saw us online, just thank you so much for taking the time to do so, because I think sometimes it can seem like a bit of a chore to speak about things like mental health, because it can be seen as, dark, not as enjoyable. But I think just like events like these, it's just beautiful. There's so many people talking about something which you all experience. So anyone who's involved in any way, shape, or form, thank you so much. Thank you once again to Horatio for making this all happen. And our friends at EY for making this happen as well. So thank you so much. And as always, take care and stay blessed, everyone. Thank you.
Before everyone goes, I know that there were going to be some final remarks from EY. Did you still want to?
So just quickly from everyone here, so I talked about a program that I put together for first-year students called the Black Heritage and Business Program as well. But for anyone who does, is looking to potentially do an internship, like I mentioned, I've taken on the lead for hiring Black talent at EY. So if you're looking for an internship, a graduate program, interested in wealth management, asset management, I will also be doing sort of training sessions for those who are interested as well. If you've got friends who knows a cousin, who knows another cousin, do let us know as well. Happy to connect with anyone here, myself or Debbie. The idea is that we don't want it to just stop here. We want everyone to be empowered. We want you to have those opportunities. We want you to get into those places of senior leadership so that you can be an example to others as well. So again, thank you to Horatio. Thank you to everyone who's presented, everyone that was on the project team. You've been amazing. Feel free to reach out to ourselves. We want to make sure that there is some sort of element that's taken away from here. We can produce future leaders as well from today as well. It doesn't just stop here. So please do connect with ourselves, as I'll be doing a lot of work in getting as much people, Black people, internships and programs I'm putting together at EY as well. So please do connect with myself. I'll be doing a lot of workshop as well to help you throughout, tedious application processes, testing, all of that stuff as well. So yeah, thanks very much.
What's the best way, Edmund, to connect with you for the people?
So LinkedIn is probably the best.
Okay.
If you just add me there, send me a message, I'll definitely reach out. And then, yeah, I've got work phone number as well, so you can take the number if you like. If you want to have a more personal conversation about your career, where you want to go, stuff like that, I'm happy to do that. I've done a lot of career mentoring and stuff like that for early careers, so happy to do that as well. So yeah.
I was going to leave you to go, but you can see it kind of pointing at me at the front over here. And so essentially all I'm going to say is this. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of acting, and my acting coach used to have this one quote that he would say over and over again. His name is Cat. Some of you may know him. The long and short is he loved this quote, and it would go, "There's no justice, just us." And I used to look at the quote and I used to think to myself, this guy is so excited about this quote. And justice isn't even a big word like that. But generally speaking, it's interesting because as life went on, year after year after year, it did reveal itself to me as a really significant quote. That we can have all of these conversations, we can do all of these things. In reality, if any change is going to happen, it's because we come together and we make it happen for ourselves. And if there's one thing that we take away from today, it is that there is a lot that we need to take on from a challenge perspective. But there is so much that we can do together. And as I sat here at the corner, quiet, looking at Lee, looking at everyone else who we've had, seeing all the smiling, all of the faces, the thing that really stood out is the fact that we're here in the first place. And I know, particularly from a student standpoint, a lot of you are used to, we love EY. EY are the reason why we're here today in terms of obviously funding everything. But generally speaking, many corporates will be saying to everyone, success, 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 come to us, be with us, do things with us. But actually, where is the health? Where is the wealth, as was put here? And part of that wealth journey starts with us remembering that we have to be there for each other. So all I can say to everyone who's in this room, a really big thank you. At the core of YDWC, what you see all throughout this is a community of 7,000 professionals from diverse cultural backgrounds who want to be there for each other. And in some small way, each of us was here for us today. So, all I will say now. Okay, so I'm gonna cut myself and say I genuinely appreciate everyone being here. I'm gonna try and speak to as many people with my mask and get as many kind of arm hugs as we can in the best and safest possible way. But again, a big thank you to EY, a big thank you to all of our guests, and then most of all, a big thank you to you and to everyone who's in the
Guys, I just want to say as well, if you do join the YDWC network, if you do apply for any role with us, I will fast track your application. So YDWC are a great partner of ours, and if you have the privilege of joining the community,